and welcome to episode 24, the old Jack Bauer of Tomorrow's World Audit Time. Evening, Mark.
Evening, Russ. How are you?
Well, Mark, never mind how am I. As I look at you through my my Zoom screen here, Mark, I can see you're wearing a big stripy scarf, and then in one of your hands you've got one of those swivelly rattle things, and then in the other hand you're clutching a vuvuzela, Mark. I mean, I'm no doctor, but I think I'm going to have to say that you've come down with a severe case of World Cup fever.
I have, Russ. It's awful. I managed to completely avoid COVID, but I've got a bad case of World Cup fever.
You've actually got a match on now, haven't you?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. I'm watching one right now.
Oh, brilliant.
How dare you imply that I wouldn't watch a football just because I have to either A, work, or B, do this?
So, listeners, if if it seems like Mark is a bit distracted at any point in this podcast,
it's because I am.
It's because he is.
Yeah.
Well, the World Cup, obviously, as the listeners may have picked up in previous episodes, I have almost no interest in the football. But
almost no interest?
Oh, actually,
what's the slight interest that you're pretending you have?
Don't
lie to these. Don't lie to our precious listeners.
Absolutely no interest in the football. But Mark, it was your birthday a few weeks back, wasn't it? And I didn't get you a gift of any kind.
No,
but I thought that perhaps this episode will be my gift to you, Mark. You can talk about football as much as you like, and I absolutely promise I won't cut it out like I normally do.
Oh, wow. Do you know, amongst us football aficionados, a gift like this might be referred to as a hospital pass for us. What a treat. I can't wait to talk about football. It's a shame this is the episode we have to talk about it through, because it's... the one segment is so dull.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, like, I did a little search on the BBC Genome thing where you can look at the program descriptions of all the episodes, and I searched through and I searched for Tomorrow's World Cup, and only 2 episodes in the whole history of Tomorrow's World have World Cup mentioned in their descriptions. And it is this episode we're looking at today, which is the June the 3rd, 1998. And then it is the previous weeks as well, which is, 27th of May, 1998. And that episode featured Kevin Keegan and the England team testing out a new gym equipment called Techno Gym, which I remember seeing in my university's gym. So it must have become a successful thing. However, astonishingly, Mark, that episode was more boring than this episode, which which is already quite boring.
This is a very boring episode. So, God, well done you. You're quite the master sometimes, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Obviously, there is a Tomorrow's World the following week, which would be the day the World Cup started. But in a nice bit of little counter programming, they decided to make that all about fluffy animals and babies. Presumably because there's nobody who likes football can also like fluffy animals and babies at the same time.
No.
Those two things are opposites.
No, it's definitely not sexist at all. It is because famously people who don't like football love cuddling things.
Yeah. So I guess. There's no reason why Tomorrow's World would necessarily have had much to do with the World Cup, because football was not a particularly technological thing until recent years, was it? There wasn't really any technology in football, so it would never have really turned up on it, I guess. And also, I think Tomorrow's World just has sort of loftier ambitions than Commodore Garden ball sports.
Well, it's an interesting observation. Let's reframe it. I think Tomorrow's World had loftier ambitions until around this time. You're not wrong. I mean, like, football barely changes any time between the 60s and the mid 90s. So I think there would be absolutely nothing that they would ever. But the only thing that would change, obviously, would be like the broadcasting of it. But you can use numerous examples other than a live football game. I'm not that shocked that this is one of the first dedicated kind of segments towards, like, because literally this is the future of football. This is them peering into the future and working out exactly how football will look and feel and be officiated. There's no way they would have done that. By the way, partly because I just thinking of all the presenters, not a single one of them I think has any interest in football.
No,
and I base that on nothing. I mean, we know Howard loves rugby, but that's about it. Yeah. He's the jock. He's the classic jock of the Tomorrow's World changing rooms, isn't he?
Yeah.
Flicking the wet towel.
Yeah, obviously Raymondo's into his motorsport instead. Far
Of course
more,
he is, yeah.
Far,
As are
far
half
more,
the cast, Willy Wooly, and stuff like that. Yeah, no, the football would have been beneath them.
as it is with me.
So your lofty heights.
So the 1998 World Cup, Mark, fond memories of it. How does it compare to the World Cup of 2022?
Did you write these questions in advance?
No,
This is very good, Russ. No. Do I have fond memories of 98? Yeah, mostly. Actually, I do have fond memories of France 98, since you've asked. I mean, obviously, there was the difficult England-Argentina game that was very upsetting because it felt two big heavyweights of the competition meeting in the round of 16. One of them has to go out. And, of course, there was the whole kind of cheaty David Beckham getting sent off thing. And the Sol Campbell goal that was ruled off for an elbow in the face, which probably accurate. I mean, that was a little bit, that hurt a bit because, you always want England to go far when all your friends are English. But in general, I do have fond memories of the competition. I thought it was really fun. It's like, we were 17, so it's always like a really good age to kind of be underage drinking and watching some games. I think I have memories of actually leaving school as a sixth former with Jerry, not you, somebody else, and going off to watch I think the Netherlands Argentina I think it was that group stage game, something like that, but in the Netherlands, and seeing an incredible Dennis Bergkamp goal in a pub well, not on a school uniform because we were in suits, but clearly just having come from school and underage. You can't pay for memories like this, Russ. And then obviously we had the pints and got back in the car and went to whatever class it was. So yeah, that was a lovely fun summer. I mean, because it was an earlier World Cup than it often is. I mean, it's certainly earlier than this year's World Cup. It's earlier than it often it is. So France is really good because it obviously came 2 years after Euro 96, which we did discuss before, but you cut out of an episode. So I was like, I won't bother repeating myself because I'd at least bore you, even though everyone else might have been interested and might have even kind of shared some memories with me. I don't know. We'll never know.
Our listeners don't like football, Mark.
I know.
It's a science podcast.
I won't go on too much about it, but what were your memories? Do you have any memories of France 98?
No, none.
None, zero, nothing.
No, I don't have any memories of any World Cup. I mean, I have seen football matches in World Cups. I couldn't tell you which ones they were or what was going on, really. I think, no. I mean, no idea.
Well, I mean, so your other question was, how does it compare to this World Cup?
Yeah.
I suppose it is both identical and completely different at the same time, Russ. This one is, I'm very cold. I found being in a pub garden in a t-shirt very difficult some of these games, Russ.
There's not been any benefit to the sort of coziness of the pub atmosphere of winter. They're not added anything to
I was in the pub on Friday ahead of the England game. We went into the pub to watch the Netherlands, actually. What was fun about it was that game kicked off at 4, so I had the day off with a couple of friends and we just spent it watching the games and feeling guilty because it's in Qatar. So we went to the pub, and what was nice was that, we arrived, the pub opened at 4, and it was like us 4 and another group of 4. And then about, I'd say half an hour into the game, it was packed. And it was like, oh wow, watching a random game in the pub is fun. And I suppose it did feel a bit cozier because it was warmer than it would be if we were all outside. But it is a bit weird. It is kind of wrong. Something came up on YouTube, and it was from the last World Cup in Russia. And even though that was a political nightmare, I was watching, the opening credits for the BBC popped up, and I was watching them. I was like, oh, what was that? I was like, oh, it brought back some lovely memories. And I was thinking, that was the summer. I remember being in the pub in the garden, with a big screen and enjoying drinks with friends, and just that kind of fluidity that you get from being outside, of the people coming and leaving, and all that is gone. Anyway, look, you'll remember after we stopped recording last time, I did convey the conflicting emotions I and a lot of people have about this particular World Cup, which, we don't need to go into detail. What I think will be fun is that, there's something really weird about the fact that the World Cup final is literally 8 days before Christmas. So it's like, I don't know, it's going to be kind of weird, all these kind of Christmas parties that you have and all these to-dos, it's just all going to bleed into one. So I don't know whether it's going to make it amazing or not.
imagine how drunk everybody will get at Christmas if if the team wins. Whichever country it is that wins. England probably. Well, if England wins, particularly.
But here's the thing, and this is it. This is like this is the joy of it. Like we don't know who's going to win, but England have a good chance. They had a very good first game and a pretty miserable second one. But if they do win, it would be absolutely the most England thing to do to win this World Cup. This is the monkey paw wish of a World Cup. You win the World Cup with the heaviest asterisk weighing against it, and not even that. The day you come back and you fly into a frigid grey London. There's no celebration. Who's going to go to Trafalgar Square? Everyone's going to go to Trafalgar. It was like, can you imagine how miserable and depressing that parade in the rain will be? That is absolutely right. Whoever wins this, unless they're South American, where it's the height of summer, it's going to be such a miserable celebration. But hey, you take it, don't you?
Yeah. And not
that Amsterdam would be better if the Dutch team turned up victorious.
Except presumably they'll go by on a boat instead of a bus.
Oh, did they do that? I can't wait. A double-decker bus.
Seems more likely they go around in a double-decker boat, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Just one observation that just came to me randomly when I was thinking about what do I know about football and how can I relate it to tomorrow's world, is that Gareth Southgate, the manager, famous for wearing waistcoats, isn't he?
He was in one World Cup. He's wearing a kind of a zip T-shirt thing now.
Oh, I was going to say, because does that not make him the Maggie Philbin of football managers? Because his sleeves don't match the body.
Yeah, I'll accept that, Russ. That's pretty good. Well done, you.
Yes, so moving on. I think that's enough football chat for the first bit. But so this episode, as I said, 3rd of June 1998. We've covered this era once before, which was the James Bond special. But the interesting thing about the James Bond special was that none of it was presented from the studio. No. So this is the first time we get to witness the Peter Snow, Philippa Forrester era studio. And we also get one new presenter in the form of Craig Doyle. So there is some interesting stuff to talk about in this episode, Mark. As well as me trying to explain to you how time dilation works in general relativity, but we'll get to that later on.
Can't wait.
So shall we crack on?
Let's do it.
On Tomorrow's World tonight, how music could make your child better at maths. Hello and welcome to the future.
We've got an extra dynamic show for you this week, from jet engines to time travel. Stand by for Tomorrow's World.
We've got music too. In a moment I talk to Julian Lloyd Webber about an experiment to prove that making music makes you brainy. And the people who are going to try it out for us, these children in Los Angeles.
Plus, a flight into the future, taking the smog out of holiday travel by cleaning up the jet engine.
And Jez Nelson brings us the World Cup of the 21st century. How will we be watching and playing football in the future?
Philippa says that we've got an extra dynamic show ahead of us tonight.
Jesus. How undynamic was last week's, Russ?
That's the thing. If she needs to tell us that it's an extra dynamic show.
Oh, yeah. Show, don't tell, Philippa.
Exactly, yeah. We're back in you telling us about the opening credits, because we've got a different opening credit sequence. When I first saw it, I assumed it was the same as the other one, because it is much like the previous one from this era. We saw a load of CGI flying towards us. CGI flying towards us.
Bad CGI,
with the Divine Comedy over the top of it. But you noticed a lot of differences in this one.
I did. Actually, when I first saw the episode, my little heart, it did drop when I realised that there were actually quite a lot of differences, which is why I think I wrote, I will, of course, break it down in excruciating detail when I can build up the energy. And Russ, I flat forgot until lunchtime today, so I had to rattle it out in between meetings. Yeah, first thing I noticed was that this is how I remembered it, because obviously the version we saw in 1999, which is only, 15 months after this, I complained about the fact that it was a Divine Comedy track that had been re-recorded for Tomorrow's World. This is the album version, which is, for those who are keeping track of how, I think, a much richer, better version, obviously, of the track. And the only difference is that they've added a little timpani drum roll at the end to hide the edit point into the rest of the song. And I wondered why they...
Yeah.
why did they feel the need to make a bad, worse version of it? But then...
They've done this before, though. They've done this with with previous.
They can't stop fiddling with stuff, can they? Which is why actually I do wonder if, because they have a different opening credits and version of the theme tune in 1999, perhaps they even have a different set, Russ, because, if you're going to change one thing, you might as well change everything, albeit there's no money here. Anyway, so we do have different credits. How exciting. Oh, what a joy. We start, as always, with credits in this era, no matter who is presenting, even though it's two different epochs, we start with our Nirvana baby again. But this time it appears after there's a gigantic explosion in space. It's not the Big Bang, though, because before the giant explosion, you actually see stars and a kind of a blue planet. And then, there's our baby. And we cut to what is the bulk of the credit. And as before, as you said, it's kind of bad CGI. Previously, you'll remember, I know, avid fans, they don't even need me to remind them. We'll remember that our guiding navigator through the opening credits last time was this kind of hang glider that swooped down across this kind of this river delta vista, and things flew past. This time it's a bit more aggressive. I thought it was quicker. Funny enough, I actually thought this was a shorter opening credits than 1999, which felt like it went on forever. And they are the exact same length. They are 21 seconds each, or 20 and a half.
The
or
old
something.
So Solid crew.
Yes, absolutely. So, so this time we're kind of careening forward. It's a relentless march towards progress, no doubt. We start off with a cracked, dehydrated landscape, which is mocked, I think, by a fish swimming through a blue sky. Then we have a lazy astronaut who isn't moving, and he's hiding Peter Snow in a classic trouser-blazer combination. So I don't know why this is
quite difficult to hide Peter Snow, I would have thought.
Yeah, absolutely. So how tall is that astronaut? Maybe that's why he's not moving. Anyway, Peter strides in front of 3 mirrored satellite dishes, or they could be solar death rays. You can decide. As a floating car drives by in front of him, and some kind of, skunk works jet fighter flies overhead. Obviously, the ground then becomes verdant and full of life because we're approaching Philippa, Russ.
Yes.
And she's down on a knee, crouching down, petting a Dalmatian. And she's surrounded by a line of CGI trees, and in front of what I can only describe as a poorly scaled circular skyscraper, which itself has a giant gold globe hidden behind it. I don't know what that means. As we rush past Philippa's hair, flowers start appearing from the ground as a man rushes towards us out of the distant gloom. He's blonde, and disturbingly, we fly straight into the blood vessel in his lungs. And inside the blood vessel, we see red blood cells, a segment of a model of DNA, which I'm assuming is not to scale, weird spheres that kind of reminded me of bluer versions of the odd thing from Supergirl, the movie.
Oh, yeah.
Disturbingly, then, 2 missiles are fired at us until finally we're overtaken by a small bubble containing the Nirvana baby once more, before we then cut back to him in space and we see the title card, and that is that.
Good grief, Mark. Good grief. That's a lot to take in, isn't it? Is that the most images in one title sequence?
I think 99 fits more in,
Really?
But yeah, man, it's a lot though. I mean, because like there's like 4 different things every half second at one point. I mean, it's such a clip art cut and paste job. Like, it was literally throw anything at the screen and see what happens.
Yeah. Do you think they were all pre-rendered objects that they just got from some sort of
Well, there were a couple of elements that are repeated. For example, the astronaut is the same astronaut we see in the 1999 one, and I think even there's a couple of flowers where like, oh, they just pulled off a package of, as you say, pre-rendered CGI elements. Yeah. But bloody hell, it's rubbish.
In the 1999 one, didn't Philippa have some sort of restorative effect to the environment in that one as well?
She did, yeah. And interestingly, actually, I will talk about the end credit card later on, and the fact that there is a hierarchy of presenter that is more obvious than it used to be. Interestingly, in this version, Peter Snow is the first presenter we see. But in 1999, Philippa is. So, natural order.
Yes. Unbelievable.
But they've got to get there first. They have to learn their lesson.
Yeah. I mean, because she's infinitely better presenter than Peter Snow. I still can't warm to Peter Snow. I don't think I've not even done his. Have I done his background yet? I don't think I have I?
No, I don't think you have. No,
I didn't.
No.
I didn't even research it this time.
No. Well, I suppose we could do it next time. But yeah. I mean, and do you know what? I never even thought that you hadn't.
Yeah, there's just something about him I don't like.
I liked him on. I liked him on Elections. Like, he did a job. And I remember him being announced as the new presenter of Tomorrow's World. And it was a big news story. It was a big deal. It felt like Tomorrow's World had poached Peter Snow, who I don't know if he'd done any kind of non-election cephalogical presentation at that time. I don't know if this was his first step into kind of entertainment broadcasting, but like it was a big deal. I don't know if you remember, but like it was a big deal. But yeah, I mean, you know, it did rather. I mean, as you said in the notes, like Philippa had been the presenter already.
Yeah.
Like she wasn't brought in as his kind of, you know, companion, his Doctor Who style companion. She was already there.
Yeah, immediately prior to this, Howard was the main male presenter. To go from him to Peter Snow is a real downgrade, if you ask me.
That's a bad regeneration.
It certainly is. Actually, speaking of Doctor Who, I found that those opening titles slightly reminded me of the Doctor Who.
They do,
titles.
yeah.
That sort
The
of so
original
strange.
ones.
That seemed that
Well,
strange.
the
That
original ones.
forward motion.
Yeah.
With the music going, like sort of
Building and building.
and building sort of thing. Yeah, maybe this was an influence on them when they made that, or maybe the same guy knocked them up. Because to be very fair, the Doctor Who titles mostly look pretty crap as well. I always think
They're best not rewatched, aren't they? Yeah, they do. They always look a bit cheesy. They're never brilliant. You just close your eyes and enjoy the music, I suppose.
Anyway, onto the studio, Mark. I would say there's one good thing about this studio. It enables us to tick off the item presented from a gantry thing very easily, because this studio is absolute gantries galore, isn't it?
It is pure gantry.
For some reason, in this era of the BBC in general, in their factual programs, decided to make a lot of their sets look like they're working offices in some way, but they're clearly not working offices. I mean, this is full of office equipment, but it is all randomly the desks are randomly set up in random places on sort of inaccessible gantries, pointing in all directions. It's like sort of MC Escher style office. And each desk has got a different type of screen on it. It's like a different type of TV screen or video recorder or something. There's no one in there apart from Philippa and Peter. And
the thing is, you know, in the last episode, we were talking about how much we enjoyed the previous Doctor Who Tomorrow's World set, partly because it's a much bigger space. I don't know. The weird thing is, the larger, emptier set of the previous era feels fuller and richer than this one. Now, essentially, this set is jam-packed full of stuff, and yet it is absolutely empty. Every element seems to highlight the fact that there's nothing in it. There's, you know, so even the office space that looks like it should be filled with people researching stuff or thinking about the future, there's no one there, and it feels very lonely, kind of philosophically and literally quite lonely. And then there's all these kind of weird kind of faux Jeff Koons kind of melted balloon shapes, which to my mind kind of smacks of a lack of faith in the original concept of the set. It's very poor.
It's like, well, I mean, in the previous iteration of the sets, everything in the set was there for the benefit of the items.
Yes.
So
the space was to be filled by the stuff they were talking about.
Yeah. Whereas this is none of this is relevant, or it's inauthentic.
Yes. That's right. That's inauthentic. Yeah, very good. I don't know where they'd fit a Reading bus, or a combine harvester or whatever.
No, but there we go. Yeah, so clearly this is the sign of decline. Not only is in the set, I think certainly leaks into the presentation of all the segments as well. Yes,
the ambition. There's just less ambition about the show than there even was in the last. I mean, God's sake. I mean, we complained about the literal damp squib the last episode ended on, but it still felt more ambitious than this, or more kind of. Let me rephrase this. I think we're getting closer to being able to put a definitive date on when this show started its decline, and clearly it is increasingly likely that it is whatever Peter Snow's first episode is.
yeah. And he opens with the line "Hello and welcome to the future,"
which I like a lot, Russ.
Which I do like a lot, but considering
no buts, Russ.
Considering what we now know the future of the program holds.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh, do you feel it feels like you're being stabbed in the back? I thought you were going to say that you'd like to use it to open these shows, but you feel too committed to what you already do. Whereas I'm thinking like, no, you can change it. Not least because the one you just did was so loud, I could see it. My microphone picked up you shouting in my ears, and I can see the little waves.
Well, maybe I'll give it a try next time. Let's see.
Yeah. Was it hello and welcome to the future?
Yeah.
And that's fun, isn't it?
What happens if I shouted the hello And then
Go on, do you want to practice? Let's see.
hello and welcome to the future.
Oh, I actually quite like the way you completely dropped off the volume there. That was quite good. Yeah, I mean, that was okay. We can workshop this.
All right. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Well, in the meantime, shall we crack on with the first segment?
Yeah, let's do it.
But first, music. I don't know about you, but when I was at school, music lessons were just a chance to relax. And overall, music is certainly not considered as important a part of our education as English or maths. In fact, there's no obligation to teach it at all. Well, maybe I should have paid more attention, because new research suggests that music may actually affect the way children's brains develop and help them with other subjects at school. Craig Doyle goes back to school in Los Angeles.
Monday morning, and it's piano class for these 7-year-olds at a primary school in inner city Los Angeles, the best class of the week. Do you love music?
Yes,
Yeah, why do you love music?
because I like the sound.
So why do you like music?
Because you get to play all the notes and know all the notes.
Yeah, and why do you want to play all the notes?
So when I play, other people will clap for me.
Music is something that's clearly very important to these children, but perhaps it's more important than they realise. They're taking part in an experiment to show how playing music may affect their ability to learn. This idea comes from Professor Gordon Shaw at the University of California. He believes playing music enhances the brain's ability to recognise and manipulate patterns, improving the children's ability to learn complex ideas in maths and science.
If we combine the music training with teaching certain math and science concepts of employing this ability to use patterns, then it should carry over to enable those kids to do better on the math and science, which is really the bottom line of what parents and educators are interested in.
This class are taking part in a pioneering study to see how the music lesson they're about to take will affect their ability in other subjects.
We have two groups that we're running. One gets language training on computers, and the other gets music training 3 days a week. Letters.
The children in the music group are learning to play a short piece taken from a Mozart sonata. They listen to what they play through a pair of headphones. If Professor Shaw is correct, then after a few weeks, these children should also see an improvement in their ability to learn maths.
Diana, on your mark, you ready, Cristobal? Get your fingers ready. Get set, go. Very good. Yes, start.
A second class are using computers to play games with cartoon characters designed to improve their English.
They are very, very hot.
These children get the same degree of attention from the teacher, and they're also using a keyboard, a computer keyboard instead of a piano keyboard. According to the theory, these children should see no improvement in their maths ability. Both groups are regularly tested on their ability in maths.
You play any musical instruments, Mark?
I learned the trumpet for a while, but I would argue I no longer play that, so no.
Any good at maths?
I'm just not really, not anymore. Well, I'm okay. Actually, I'm all right, but I'm not brilliant. Yeah. Connection between me no longer playing the trumpet and not even being sure how good I am at maths. Yeah, direct connection. What about you? Do you play an instrument? You don't play an instrument.
No.
Not one we can talk about on air.
Hey! It was music and PE were the two subjects at school which I had absolutely no ability at whatsoever. Yeah, so I dropped music as soon as possible. The only thing I remember about music lessons at school was the fact that at the beginning of every lesson, we'd all hit the demo mode on the Yamaha keyboards. It was only later in life that I worked out that they were playing Bananarama's Venus in the demo mode. I hadn't really worked out at the time. And that there's something about the different notes are called tea, coffee, bread and butter, vinegar. And that is the only two things I knew about that I remember from music lessons. Absolutely nothing else went into my head. The music is a total mystery to me.
You definitely made that up. That was clearly something you said to yourself to keep yourself occupied. I don't remember anything.
Tea, coffee, bread, and butter vinegar.
No,
that's to do with
5 notes.
That's to do with that's to do with like the quavers and the semi-quavers and the crotchets. But I'm not that bad at maths. So I mean, how have I done it, Mark? How have I managed to?
Have you done it?
How have I managed to be not that bad at maths if I have no musical ability whatsoever? It's a mystery.
I don't know. No, I'm sure Professor Shaw would have no answer. You're his great white whale, Russ.
Do you remember the fact that we have sort of covered this in a previous episode?
You wrote it there, and I vaguely remember it, but no, I not really. No, I mean, a lot of this goes way. I don't care.
No,
Once we've done this, I move on with my life. No, actually, I don't remember. I vaguely remember, but I know enough that it wasn't a full segment. It was a tiny little bit that they just threw in, didn't they?
Yeah, I mean, it was slightly different. So it is, I guess, slightly different in that. The previous thing that I covered, it was a little factoid in this little section of factoids in about a 1993 episode or something like that, and it just said listening to music makes you smarter or something like that. And I explained that was all nonsense. And the difference in this is that they're actually playing music, aren't they?
They are playing music, yes.
Yeah. But interestingly, it is Gordon Shaw, Professor Gordon Shaw, is the same person. He's the person that's been hammering this throughout. So it's him that came up with the idea that listening to music makes you smarter. But but what do you think about the segment, Mark?
When it first came on, I didn't enjoy it. No. And then once I'd finished watching the episode, it's actually one of the better things we see. It's so long.
Yeah.
And I think throughout most of it, I was frustrated by the fact that, even ignoring the fact that we discussed this in episode 12, this is not a new idea. I know it's specifically around playing a musical instrument, but the idea of music makes you smarter is, well, it feels just like a hoary old trope, even as late as 1998. So it was a bit, and because it goes on for so long, I started kind of thinking about things. I started thinking about the morality of experimenting on children when it comes to educational attainment. Because what they do is they, and the thing is, actually quite a lot of these segments are quite long, so I don't know how much you're going to splice in. So, I might be worth this kind of just talking through them in a very light way, but they basically, there's what does he say? There's an inner city school in Los Angeles, which I'm assuming, and I said to you before, it's I assume we're supposed to think it's on the mean, gritty streets. The kids' families are either Bloods or Crips. And actually, it seems like a really middle-class school where they're all in school uniforms. And they've all got a piano to play, well, a keyboard to play. So, it's not that, inner city Los Angeles. Yeah, come on. It's like the Islington of Los Angeles. So half the class, or one class, are taught piano on a piano keyboard on a Monday, and the other half are taught on a computer. And they seem to be suggesting that the kids who are learning the piano are better at maths. And then it just made me think, so that's great. Well done, everybody. What do we do about these poor kids you forced to play on a computer who now are rubbish at maths? What's the plan for them? And that began to really annoy me. It's well, are we just going to... How are we going to get them back up to speed now? Because, these young ages of educational learning are really important, Russ, in the foundation of, they can't grow up to be like you and just brilliant at maths despite not playing an instrument, We're not all given God's, God hasn't all blessed us with magical Russell abilities. Then I just started thinking about other things like Professor Shaw's office, but I'm sure we'll discuss that later. I don't know. I to be honest, it's so... haven't we been there? Haven't we done this? Doesn't this come up every 5 years, this idea?
Yeah.
And either nothing happens or everything, nothing happens. If it, I suppose my feeling was if this was true, really music would be hardwired into school.
Yeah.
And it's not.
No.
So, there we go.
Yeah.
That was my thinking. Yeah, I'm sorry. That's not a very amusing or succinct way of describing what I thought. But it's but then this isn't a very amusing or succinct segment. So,
but I'm just very dubious about how much music those kids are learning as well, because they're very young. I mean, they can barely string a sentence together in those.
They're 7 years old,
and of course we've got Craig Doyle, who I'll get to in a minute, interviewing the kids. My least favourite thing possible is not just a vox pop, but a vox pop from a child. It's just literally the worst kind of TV ever. They're just talking gibberish. But I'm not sure how much, because they're all individually learning as well. They're all wearing headphones, so the teacher can't hear what they're doing. They could just be sitting there just bashing away at the keys randomly, or listening to Bananarama on the demo mode for all we know. It's not. I'm just very dubious as to how much actual musical learning they're doing.
Well, I mean, in this segment and in the interview that follows, there is some very, very dubious claims being made about what it is we are supposedly seeing. And yeah, those kids aren't learning. Like, they're having fun, don't get me wrong. They're having a right good laugh. And they're moving their... Like, it's almost like... Is the experiment really on, like, them moving their fingers? Because that's as much as they're doing. They're not learning... You're right, they're not really learning how to play at all. Oh, I don't know. It's just bad, isn't it? Yeah. Craig, and Craig Doyle looks like he's about... Well, he looks like he's their peer in his dad's giant shirt. So I can't even trust him.
Well, that shirt is so big. I said in the notes, he looks like at the end of Big, where Tom Hanks walks away and then he turns back into the kid and he's still wearing Tom Hanks-sized clothes. That is the size of the shirt that Craig Doyle is wearing in this.
You'd never buy any double glazing off him in that shirt, would you? You just wouldn't trust him.
Did you think that Craig Doyle looked a bit like a sort of a slightly more handsome, more normal, well, sort of less comedian version looking of Adam Buxton? Or was that just me?
It was you, but then when you said it, it was like, yeah, I see what you mean. I do see what you mean, yeah. Back when Adam Buxton looked young and handsome.
Yeah.
Not that he doesn't look handsome now, but he does look like, a Romanoff.
Well, I could give you some Craig Doyle facts while we're here, I guess.
Oh, please.
Born the 17th of December, 1970, in Dublin, in this suburb of Stillorgan. That makes it...
Beautifully, Stillorgan. Yeah.
Yeah. Which makes him 51 years old at the moment. Obviously, he'll be 52 later this year. He attended quite prestigious Black Rock College, which one of our listeners attended, Mark.
Ooh.
Tim, esteemed listener Tim.
He went to Black Rock.
He went to Black Rock.
Very good.
And also Bob Geldof, Ardal O'Hanion, and Frank Kelly, who played Father Jack. So two of the Father Ted people went there.
Yeah, very good.
They're known as Old Rock Men.
Old Rock Men,
which is particularly suitable for Bob Geldof there, I guess. But yeah, so he studied broadcast journalism in London and got a job at BBC Radio Suffolk. And then for some reason, they didn't elaborate on this, but he somehow got a job on ITV's Disney Club in 1995 after bumping into somebody at Alton Towers. So I guess like the producer, I think. So I think the producer maybe just saw him at Alton Towers and went, "Oh, he's a handsome guy. Let's get him on."
Because I was going to say,
I don't know.
I was about to say, like, I'm quite klutzy. I bump into people often. I've never been offered a job in television, but you have rather explained it there. So that, yeah.
Actually, his first Tomorrow's World segment was in 1996, so he's actually been doing the occasional one for a long time. I didn't realise. And then his last one was in 1999. Then he got the top BBC gig of presenting the holiday programme for 6 years. That's cushy little number.
That is the cushiest, yeah.
And then he went on to sports, did rugby and athletics on the BBC, and then Champions League and the Isle of Man TT on ITV. But yeah, in recent years, occasionally stands in for Philip Schofield, and when he's on holiday from This Morning. I just saw a Daily Mirror article with roundups of comments on Twitter of people who didn't know who Craig Doyle was, marvelling at how young he looks for a 51-year-old.
Yes, I think that's remarkable. I was shocked when you said he was born in 71. But also the fact that, like, I don't know what he's up to. Now I know because he's on ITV. So, yeah. No wonder he's gone from my mind.
Yeah. But it fronted 3 different advertising campaigns. Obviously, Everest Windows, as you said, double glazing. And also in Ireland, UPC Cable Service and Littlewoods. So the amount of sweet advertising bunts he must have accumulated
bags full. Yeah, love it.
Been married to his wife Doon since 2001. They've got 4 kids. They live in County Wicklow, but also have a second home in Kew in London. So
that's nice, isn't it?
It's all right, isn't it? Kew's not a cheap place, is it? So they're obviously a lovely advertising bunts purchased house, I reckon.
County Wicklow's lovely. We have some listeners who live in County Wicklow, Russ.
And hopefully, these days he's found himself some shirts that fit him.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, surely some of that money must have gone to a medium-sized shirt. just the one.
At least he didn't do that that thing about goldfish that they grow to fill the, whatever pond you put them in.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Otherwise he'd be as big as a house these days, isn't he? So, I mean, he's not doing a bad job. He gets to meet...
Craig. No, he's fine.
One thing about this episode is that there are a lot of academics interviewed. I've had to review quite a lot of academics this episode. As we said, we've got the aforementioned Professor Gordon Shaw. And he's the brains behind this whole theory.
Well, can I just say, before we talk about who he is the first of 2 academics interviewed in what I can only describe as a wonderfully stereotypically messy office. The kind of office where, like, as I said, I don't need to see a certificate on a wall. Your bona fides are in the fact that you can't manage the admin of, your shelves and your desk.
Yeah.
Here's the money. Go do what you need to do. And the thing is, like, when I first saw it, I thought, well, there you go. That's the most stereotypical office I've seen for a long time. But wait. Because somebody looked at Professor Shaw and said, hold my beer. Because if I put it down, I'll never find it again.
There's no desire to tidy up for the cameras. I guess maybe it's a badge of honor, isn't it? Really, I guess in some.
Maybe. Except that I would imagine being interviewed by the BBC is also quite prestigious. Yeah. Especially if you're American. Like I'm sure Professor Shaw is aware that he probably grew up watching Monty Python and Doctor Who and PBS like quite a lot of nerdy American kids. Yeah. And as the fact that the BBC is, do you know what? Actually, I've just realised, Russ, maybe he did tidy up. Yeah, do you know what? I'm sorry, Professor Shaw. You tidied up, and your mum would be proud. Well done.
Well, poor old Professor Shaw, unfortunately gone to the big messy office in the sky.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that.
Yeah, he died in 2005, April 2005, of kidney cancer. He was 72 years old. Wow. But weirdly, his sort of training was in theoretical physics. He only became interested in brains in 1974 when he decided to start working on brain theory. But he really latched onto this whole idea that music could improve cognitive ability and sort of pressed on with it all throughout the years. The thing was that this. So he first published it in 1993. The idea that if you listened to a particular piece of Mozart, which was Mozart's Sonata for 2 pianos in D major, then students would do better in tests involving spatial reasoning for 15 minutes after listening to that piece of music. That was the initial thing. All of the journalists jumped on it, and the media jumped on it, and then they changed it to being, if you listen to Mozart in particular, you will become cleverer, and in the 90s, that was the whole idea. This is like the sort of the thing that caused everybody in the 90s to suggest that everyone should be listening to Mozart all the time, and then they'll all become super brain, which wasn't what the initial experiment said, but that's how it was interpreted. But Gordon Shaw continued with this idea, and obviously it was coined the Mozart effect. But he's not really helped himself, because he does still seemingly use Mozart in all of his experiments. Because if you in this one, I don't know whether you were hit by that. There's a piece of Mozart played in this segment as well on the TV, which is Mozart's Piano Sonata Number 16 in C major, and that immediately gave me a horrible flashback to episode 7, where we heard mine in class belting it out on the old Joanna.
It wasn't her fault, by the way. Mining class did a really good job. That's not why it's a horrible flashback. Yeah, I recognised it. I recognised it in context of Tomorrow's World. I didn't pull it until you reminded me. Mostly because I really try not to think about that episode quite hard. I spend a lot of effort every day not thinking about that episode, Russ.
Although Mylene is a keen astronomer, so she must be quite good at maths. So
probably.
Never know. Maybe there's something in this. So the thing is that like no one can agree on whether the listening to Mozart thing, as I said in the previous episode where we covered this, has been pretty much debunked. And sort of any sort of beneficial effect of listening to Mozart can just be put down to the fact that the music is stimulating your brain. But anything can be stimulating your brain. There was one experiment where they just played a Stephen King audiobook to people, and it had exactly the same effect as listening to Mozart. Yeah. So it's just the fact that your brain starts working properly. So that has been completely thoroughly debunked. The idea of whether playing music helps you, that's a bit more up in the air. There have been quite a lot of studies that say that it does. But then equally, a lot of people have said, well, there's too many other variables that you haven't taken into account that could be causing this, because you've got sort of like lots of socio-economic factors and things like that. Because people who learn an instrument could quite possibly have, or any other number of aspects of their life that mean that they would be more likely to do well at maths that are nothing to do with the fact that they know about music. We've got one good quote from one professor who just said, the association between performing music and having good mathematical skills could mean simply that smart people are good at things.
Okay,
Which I thought was quite good. But in the corner of whether maths does make you good at music, we do have a list of musicians who were mathematicians or mathematicians who were musicians. So you've got Einstein, Art Garfunkel, Brian May, Delia Derbyshire, the Doctor Who theme tune lady, Tom Lehrer, and Philip Glass.
Oh.
So, maybe there is something in it, Mark. Oh, yes, and also, sorry, Dr. Amy Graziano.
Well, I wasn't going to let you forget. There's 2 things I want to say further. Go on.
Who deserves a mention, doesn't she? She does,
yeah.
She's just listed as music teacher on this. I mean, she's a little bit more than that. She's a proper.
I assume the fact that she was referred to as Dr. Amy Graziano meant that she was very much involved in Professor Shaw's program. Yeah,
she's a proper university music professor. How would you describe her, Mark?
How would I describe? I found her really endearing. I quite liked her. She really reminded me of someone. And I still can't quite pull it because it's much more flattering than the person I did pull, which was she does remind me of a young emo Phillips.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
And she also reminds me a bit of the actress who plays Monica Geller from the Springsteen video.
Courtney Cox.
Yeah, she looks a bit like Courtney Cox in that
like
video. Yeah, she does. 100%, Russ. 100%. See, why? Who does she remind you of?
I think she looks like a young Barry Manilow, but wearing the sort of clothes that a character in the Star Wars prequels wear. But I did manage to find her on ratemyprofessor.com.
Oh, wow.
Where students go on there and, rate their professors out of 5. She gets a shocking great 4.6 out of 5.
Hey!
Out of 30 reviews, there's only one bad one. Most of the reviews are,
Well, don't read it out, Russ. Don't focus on the
I was going to read out one of the good ones.
Oh, good. All right.
So there's 30 reviews, and they're all incredibly similar to the point where maybe she's written them all herself. I don't know. Maybe she's a very consistent professor. But yeah, it's like, Dr. Graziano is one of the nicest professors you'll ever meet.
I believe this.
She is very loose with deadlines, very enthusiastic about what she teaches, and always comes to class with a positive attitude. She's also just so easily approachable, both inside and outside of class. Assignments are fairly easy, and she didn't give any tests. Dr. G is awesome. So,
Dr. G is awesome. Okay.
Yeah, a lot of
that's lovely.
Yeah. And then there's another said, her tests may be hard, but she is a great teacher and a lot of fun. She has the voice of a mouse and is very cute.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. She's quite adorable, isn't she?
So the only negative review, and I don't think this is too bad a review really, is capital letters, very hard class. If you have no interest in music, don't take it. If you do, it's a good class.
That's a stupid review. That's like going to an Italian restaurant and then complaining because you don't like Italian food. Come off. I feel very protective of her now. I don't know why.
So yeah, in conclusion, it's mostly nonsense. There could be something in it, but they still don't know. It's still completely inconclusive and nowhere near as sure as they seem to be in conclusion in this segment, really.
There is one line I wanted to draw attention to that I think that Craig Doyle says in a voiceover when I think he's talking about learning to play. And he says, the patterns of notes that make up classical music in particular, are similar to patterns of activity that are found in the brain.
Yeah, I mean, that's nonsense, isn't it? I mean,
how does
that even work?
What is that? That is utter nonsense, but he says it with such confidence.
Yeah.
Which means that somebody has told him that. Yeah. And I assumed it came straight from Professor Shaw.
Probably. I mean...
Because we see these columns of colours. Yeah, these kind of weird columns of like red and yellow and green colours or something like that. And like it zooms in on one, which I assume is the pattern of classical music. And then we're told that it's the same as, or it's similar to patterns that are found in the brain. I remember thinking, like, what in God's name is this? This is, so tosh.
Yeah. Imagine
makes no sense.
Just cutting open somebody's brain and finding sort of like a stave in it with all the... Yeah.
Was that a tea or a coffee or a vinegar or what was that, Russ?
Actually, there is plenty of tea, coffee, bread and butter vinegar in my brain, I would have thought.
Yeah.
And then we think the piece has ended.
Yes.
But then they've decided to throw a celeb at us to find out what he thinks about the whole thing.
Yeah.
A noted non-mathematician, Julian Lloyd Webber. So let's have a listen to what he has to say.
Well, Professor Shaw is right. Our children should be learning a lot more music. Here in Britain at the moment, music classes take up less than 1 hour a week. And one person who wants to see more time given to it is cellist Julian Lloyd Webber. Now, Julian, are you surprised that in America it's found that music helps people do maths better?
Not at all. I think there have been many studies in the past which have shown that music actually improves mental abilities over the whole range of school subjects. And I think it's because the coordination required to play a musical instrument is immense. I think you're using a lot of areas of the brain at one time. I mean, I know that, if I'm very tired, I can't really play very well, but I could make a phone call, I could write letters, but actually playing an instrument, I think, is one of the hardest things you can do.
What difference do you think more music in school would make to pupils?
Well, I think it make a lot of difference. I think it will improve their general ability, their learning abilities. But I think there's another point. I mean, if you don't have music at school and you don't have it in the family, you're not going to find out whether there are really talented musicians out there. And I think a world without music would be a very sad place. And the way things are going with the national curriculum at the moment, we could be heading for something like that.
Well, now, what would be your message to the government when it comes to review the national curriculum?
I think it's very important that there is a core place for music, that children should study music in some form at school.
Julian Lloyd Webber, thank you very much.
Did you ever watch the old Incredible Hulk programme with Lou Ferrigno in it, Mark?
Yeah, as a child I did, yeah definitely.
Yeah. Did you not also think that Julian Lloyd Webber here looked quite a lot like...
Not until you pointed it out, Russ. And then I have to say, I do see the similarity, unfortunately.
It's that hair is that sort of that weirdly shaggy, wiry hair, and those piercing blue eyes, and that deep brow. It's just pure Lou Ferrigno's The Incredible Hulk. I found that quite distracting. But yeah, I mean, do we care what Julian Lloyd Webber has to say?
No, but the assumption is that we should or might. I really didn't like this bit.
No.
And actually, the fact that it's short, initially I remember thinking like, well, at least it's short. And then I'm thinking like, no, that's even more offensive. It's an indication that they don't think it's worth it. So it really is just because he's a goddamn celebrity. I mean, how interesting would it have been if they'd had like a different academic who'd done similar studies and come to the same conclusion, or somebody who's just an expert in politics or the national curriculum. Instead, you have the man who is only famous because of the South Bank show theme music and his brother. And I know he is quite a good musician, but like, I mean, it's just utter. It's so stupid. It's really patronizing. It's not quite as patronizing as mine in class, because actually mine in class might have had some interesting things to say, but she was bullied into playing the piano. In what is it, 3 years time, and 4 years time. I was like, I really didn't like this. And you said he comes across as a bit of a twat. Not sure exactly. I just don't like him. And I remember thinking like, well, I'll tell you why you don't like him, because he's so arrogant, and like he can barely hide his own admiration of his own abilities. I thought it was summed up by the line: the coordination required to play a musical instrument is immense. I think you're using a lot of areas of the brain at one time, but actually playing an instrument is one of the hardest things you can do. And that, it's like, really, Julian, says you. It's like, he's like, go on then, off to the valley with you. Let's see how you do a day down the pits or something like that. I don't want to be like, kind of, but like, it's just like so self-serving. It's just actually, it really wound me up.
Yeah.
Because as annoyed as I was by Craig Doyle's segment, it was actually quite sweet. And the kids are quite sweet. And Professor Shaw's quite sweet, and Dr. Graziano's quite sweet. It's all quite nice. Yeah. Like it's a lovely little piece. And then you dump Julian Lloyd Webber, who is whinging and moaning about new Labour's approach to the national curriculum, an area I genuinely believe he has no knowledge in whatsoever.
I didn't make a note of what school he went to. But he went to some sort of posh school, didn't he?
Of course he did. Yeah.
Oh yeah, his dad was a musician as well. I didn't know. That's why I always assumed that he just got his job because of his brother. But he actually got his job because of his dad.
So they both got jobs because of their dad, not because of each other.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. Wow. Quelle surprise.
William Lloyd Webber. There's no hyphen in their name. This is not something that occurred to me. I don't think I've ever noticed this before, but some people with double-barreled names don't have a hyphen in them.
No.
And he's one of them, which obviously makes it confusing because people think that his middle name's Lloyd, but it's not. The only interesting thing I found out about him, really, is that he's been married 4 times.
Really?
Which is one.
Is that one less than his brother?
No, it's one more than his brother. His brother's Andrew's only been.
Sorry, that's what I meant. Andrew's one less.
Yeah.
Wow.
Andrew's been married 3 times. Yeah. One of Julian Lloyd Webber's wives Not his current one, but a former one.
Is it Sarah Brightman's sister?
No. The great niece of the last king of Afghanistan.
Wow.
Yeah, that's the claim to fame, isn't it?
That is incredible claim to fame.
And just to very quickly bring it back to football, Mark, both
Yes.
Andrew and Julian Lloyd Webber's Wikipedia pages are at great pains to point out that they are lifelong Leyton Orient supporters.
Yeah, I was aware of Andrew Lloyd Webber. I didn't know about Julian. So, fair play.
Now, global warming. We're due to start feeling the effects in the next 2 decades. When we think about greenhouse gases, we're all quick to blame the car. But actually, even though there are 500 million cars and only 14,000 aeroplanes, the jet engine chucks out an incredible third of the emissions that all those cars do. With air travel set to double in the next 10 years, how do we clean up the skies of the future? Anya Sitaram finds out.
Summer's here and tour companies are gearing up to fly millions of us away to the sun.
This year, more people than ever are expected to take to the skies.
It's reckoned that air traffic is set to double in the next 10 years. By 2016, the number of passengers flying out of London alone will be 160 million. That's nearly 3 flights for every single person in the UK.
The problem is the more air travel, the more pollution.
Recently, scientists have become worried about the release of nitrogen oxides, or NOx for short. At high altitudes, these are a potent greenhouse gas, as harmful as carbon dioxide. In fact, aircraft emissions may be responsible for as much as 10% of the global warming caused by man.
But of course, the very thing that's made all this globe-trotting possible is also responsible for the pollution, and that's this amazing piece of engineering, the jet engine.
Frank Whittle developed the jet engine more than 50 years ago. Since then, there have been massive improvements, and modern life would be impossible to imagine without it.
But there's one part of the engine that hasn't changed radically in over half a century, and that's the combustor, the real source of the problem.
A jet engine works by drawing air into the combustors. Here, fuel and air are mixed and burnt, providing thrust. If the temperature is high in the combustor, all the fuel burns, but NOx is produced. If you lower the temperature, you get less NOx gases, but the engine is less efficient and uses more fuel. Today's combustors burn cleaner and better than ever before, but if we want to reduce pollution any more, then science's challenge is to come up with a radical new design.
Until now, no one has found a safe and efficient way of solving this problem. But scientists here at Cranfield University think they've at last found the key to a cleaner, greener jet engine.
Professor Douglas Greenhalgh and his team claim to be able to reduce NOx emissions down to 1/5 of the cleanest of today's engines. So how's that possible? This is the Cranfield combustor. Unlike the conventional design, this one is split into 2 parts. A small chamber has been added to the front, which mixes the fuel and air before it enters the combustor proper. This means the fuel can burn at a lower temperature, and it's this that reduces the NOx emissions.
It sounds really simple. Why hasn't it been done before?
Well, the reason it hasn't been done before is because of the problems of managing the air. At takeoff, you've got a fantastic amount of air coming into the combustor. You've got a runway full coming in 1 second. We have to balance the processes.
We've seen Anya Sitaram before, Mark.
Mm-hmm.
And I discovered today that she's got a Twitter account.
Oh,
so
we haven't bullied her online yet.
Yes, yeah, I think she needs tagging when we release this episode, so she can have a listen. Last time we saw her was in that segment with the Wombats. Do you remember the Wombats?
Yeah, I do. I liked her. Yeah.
Annie presented that,
Yeah.
but I didn't give you a rundown of her career then. I think probably for time reasons. But yes, I might as well start with that, mightn't I, before we get on to jet engines?
Yeah.
There's not actually a huge amount I could find out about her. She started as a BBC local radio reporter in 1986. Does she look...
As a child?
No, because she doesn't look very old here in this, does she?
No, not at all.
I don't know how that works. But yeah, and then she worked at ITN in 1990 to 1997. Then she obviously got the job on Tomorrow's World, 1997. And she stayed on here until 2001. And then she became a news anchor on BBC World News until 2008. But she's also founded a TV production company called Rock Hopper Media, and they make documentary films. And their documentary films are all about health and the environment, mostly, as far as I can tell. And they're all just basically like little, almost like Tomorrow's World little segments that she makes. So she obviously learnt from the best and went on to do it herself. But yeah, no, she's got a Twitter mark, so make sure you tag her. Hello, Anya.
All right, I will do.
But yeah, jet engines. There's some interesting stuff here in terms of statistics, I think, Mark. Philippa, right before at the beginning there, before the segment even starts, she says there's 500 million cars and 14,000 aeroplanes. And I thought 14,000 aeroplanes sounds like hardly any, does it? I don't think that sounds like hardly any aeroplanes.
I mean, it's a big number, but not big enough. That's what I thought.
Yeah. So I couldn't, obviously I didn't try and find out actually whether that figure was correct at the time, but I found out how many aeroplanes there are now.
Okay, more.
But there's more.
Yeah.
But there's 28,674 aeroplanes in the world.
Is that including the little small ones as well? And like jet fighters and things? Yeah. Gosh, wow, okay, fair. So 14,000 probably is correct then, isn't it?
Yeah.
Gosh, okay.
But there's 1.5 billion cars now. So the number of cars has tripled and number of planes has doubled.
Yeah. And that is useful context because I was really struck by the odd tone of the whole piece because this is all about climate change, and that's why Philippa gives us those figures. It's about like, oh, you think cars are bad, but actually, you know, was it the 14,000 planes was it 30% of all NOx emissions or something like that? Because you'd think I hadn't watched this before. And but what I found really striking is that it's obviously quite serious. They're aware of the damage being done, but it actually still feels like a celebration of the jet engine and stuff like that. Which they very proudly point out is a British invention. Yeah. And isn't it great that we can all go travelling?
I mean,
maybe in 20 years. Oh no, I totally agree with you. And they say, in 20 years' time, this will be quite serious. But until then, fill your boots. Yeah. And it's very difficult to watch this 24 years later, having suffered, the hottest day in the history of the United Kingdom, as we barrel towards 1.5 degrees of climate change, to the detriment of us all. And then looking back into the past where they're like, oh, that'll be, do you know what? They're all going to sort out in the future. I promise you. No, we're long grassing this, but I assure you, in the future, no one else is going to long grass this. Yeah. I mean, we're only kicking the can down as far as the next people who I assure you are going to pick it up.
Yeah, it's strange. Yeah, I mean, Philippa even cheerfully says in that intro, we'll start to feel it in the next 20 years or something like that.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. And we're 24 years later and we are.
Yeah. I looked at how much the planes contribute. They only contribute 2.4% of global carbon dioxide emissions. So it's I don't know. It's not that bad, is it? I feel like there's other less fun things we can cut before that.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. Yeah.
I mean, in comparison, road transport contributes 15%.
You can definitely cut that.
Yeah, exactly.
Definitely cut that. I feel like. So, and there's some kind of statistics where in London, like 50% of all journeys are less than a mile.
Yeah.
Get out and walk, you lazy arsehole.
Yeah. And let me go on holiday. Yeah. So it's mainly about, I mean, it takes a little while to get to it, but it's mainly about this man, Professor Douglas Greenhalgh. Strange, is that? I never knew that was how you pronounce that name, Greenhalgh.
No, I would never have guessed that, and that's exactly how it's pronounced, apparently, Greenhalgh. Yeah, which is brilliant. I quite like it.
Yeah,
it sounds kind of Portuguese, It's Greenhalgh. Yeah,
but he works at Cranfield University, and he reckons he's come up with a new way of making sure that the emissions from a commercial jet engine that you find on your Boeings or whatever will send out the least possible amount of NOx, which is nitrogen-based. Apparently, NOx gases could be one of three gases I discovered. It could be either nitric oxide, nitrogen dioxide, or sometimes nitrous oxide, which obviously is everyone's favourite laughing gas. But there's this whole situation where it has to be a trade-off. So if you try and reduce your NOx, then you increase your CO2, and then if you try and reduce your CO2, you increase your NOx, because it's to do with how the temperature that the jet engine's running at. And Professor Greenhalgh reckons he's trying to strike the best balance between the two. But what would you reckon, Mark, about whether I found anything out about the Cranfield combustor, or anything about his name and jet engines, or anything at all about this.
Well, I mean, the fact that I wrote down, I look forward to finding out from you about how everyone is using the Cranfield combustor, might give you an indication as to exactly what I think you may found on the internet, which is the sum total of nothing.
Yeah, no, I couldn't find. I could find no reference to whatsoever. I did, however, find Professor Greenhalgh on YouTube, and I'm going to play you this. So we've already stated that this is one of the more boring episodes that we've seen.
Yeah.
I'm going to suggest that this video of Professor Greenhalgh that I found makes this episode of Tomorrow's World look like Die Hard, because I think it is such a boring video that it transcends boredom and becomes something else.
So, is this more boring than the 90-minute long video we saw of the pocket microscope explanation, which was interminable?
This is mercifully short.
Okay.
He's obviously moved on from Cranfield and now is now working at Glasgow Caledonian University, and they've asked him to talk about the university just over a minute. And I think the closest thing I would say to it is that he's in some sort of hostage situation.
I'm going to embiggen this. Look at him.
Hello, and welcome to the School of Engineering and the Built Environment. My name is Doug Greenhalgh. I had the pleasure of being the Executive Dean and Pro Vice Chancellor for the school. If you're looking to study at GCU, then I'd like you to look carefully at the many exciting offerings that we have within our school. We have programs at many levels, including undergraduate, part-time undergraduate, master's programs, and PhD and doctoral programs. Within the school, we cover a lot of academic disciplines, and our research spans energy and power, buildings and construction, environment and water, networking and security, pervasive computing and 3D technologies, design and creative technologies. Thank you.
I'm going to disagree with you, Russ. That's not boring. That is absolutely uncharismatic. But I found a lot of joy in that. I'll give you that. I found a lot of joy in that. And I'm looking at him. I guarantee he is a Mason.
I love the fact that he's not got an auto cue, but he's reading off something. But the things he's reading are not they're not directly ahead of him, and they're others opposite. And so you see his eyes wandering. Presumably he's got bits of paper stuck up all over around his office or something, and he's glancing at them all to try and remember what he needs to say.
Also, he's reading off a list of the faculty in his own department that he's the Vice Chancellor of. That's the bit he should know. Yeah. The thing is, like, it sounds really interesting. It sounds like, I'm sure it's probably really interesting subjects, but he's so uncharrismatic. Gosh.
It's strange because it's not that bad when he's actually on Tomorrow's World, is he?
No,
but
it is 20-something years before, isn't it?
Mm. And I noticed he'd finally lost those 3 strands of hair that he was so
Homer Simpson hairstyle.
Yeah, so bravely holding on to on the top of his head.
Yeah.
Maybe like Samson-like. That's what those 3. Once he lost those 3 strands, all of his charisma just vanished.
Yeah. Oh, bless his cotton socks.
As a segment, I think it's slightly confused because, well, as you said, I mean, the tone's all over the shop.
Mm.
But it's also notable that when Anya says this thing about NOx gases, she doesn't say what they are or what they do, does she?
Nope, not at all.
We're just meant to assume they're bad, presumably because they're called NOx, which sounds a bit like noxious. I don't know whether that's...
It reminded me of, isn't that the MacGuffin in the original Mission Impossible film? The NOx? Aren't they all after the NOx file or something like that? Yeah, that's what I thought of, yeah.
Yeah, maybe, yeah. But then they're talking about global warming, and I looked into NOx gases, and 2 of the 3 NOx gases don't really contribute much to global warming at all. I mean, they themselves are not greenhouse gases. They can affect other things which might cause greenhouse effect, but not nearly as much as carbon dioxide does. The one that does, nitrous oxide, laughing gas, is massively causes greenhouse effect. It's like 300 times more potent than carbon dioxide. But importantly, jet engines don't make it. Jet engines make negligible amounts of nitrous oxide. Nitrous oxide comes from coal power stations, diesel engines, and farming. So the problem with NOx gases mostly is that they cause smog. So they're the horrible brown smog that hangs over cities. That's caused by NOx gases, which obviously was back before global warming. There was a bit of a trade-off. Which is worse, having a smog-covered city or people in the future suffering from global warming? We can't decide. Sort of thing. Whereas these days, obviously, the balance has shifted, where it's very much, oh no, global warming is definitely the worst one because we're now suffering from it. The study I found said that if you're worried about climate change, then you definitely should be much more worrying about the carbon dioxide than you should be worrying about the NOx coming out of a jet engine. They shouldn't really be striking a balance. They should just be making the engine as efficient as possible in terms of fuel. So that's what they do these days, really. They're just trying to make their engines more and more efficient. There's no like magic bullet. It's not like there's no Cranfield combustor that's come along and changed everything. It's just a thing with all engines over time get more efficient as technology gets a bit better. So, and they use better components and, better designs and things like that. So I looked into, jet engines, and then I found some interesting facts about jet engines, and this made it much more interesting to me because I was getting a bit bored at this point, as I'm sure everybody listening is. So the type of jet engine that runs a commercial jet airliner is called a turbofan jet engine, right? And by far the most popular, like in terms of use, turbofan jet engine is called the CFM56. It was invented in 1974. And it was
so just before you continue, just remind me, this is what you found interesting to drag you out of your bored funk.
Yeah.
Okay, carry on.
Just you wait, Mark. Just you wait.
All right.
It's a Franco-American joint venture because obviously Boeing and Airbus are the two big plane companies. So America and France set up this company to make engines for both of them. And it was your mate Richard Nixon and Pompidou came to the deal to do it. Anyway, this CFM56 engine, Mark.
Jesus God.
It's been in use since 1974. It has racked up, if you added up all of the uses of it in all of the planes, it's racked up 1 billion flight hours, right? And it's travelled 200 billion miles, which is the equivalent of 20 round-trip journeys to Pluto and back.
Yeah, okay.
Now that's impressive, isn't it?
That's a good fact.
That is impressive.
Yeah, right.
I mean, Pluto's a long way away, Mark.
It is a long, long way away, yeah.
I was very impressed by that.
Yeah, all right.
But yeah, so, I mean, they're still working on more jet engines, trying to improve it. They tried a biofuel one. NASA tried a biofuel one. Obviously, presumably that means our skies will start smelling of chip shops. Quite nice. But also, the American-French companies working on a hydrogen-powered one, which obviously will have no nasty emissions apart from water.
No.
But the problem is that your aeroplane's got to carry massive tanks of hydrogen in it, which has
safe.
Has its own
great. Yeah.
Has its own problems, really, doesn't it? I mean, imagine one of those going up. If you like.
Yeah, no, I can, and it seems pretty horrific, Russ.
The Hindenburg with wings.
Yeah. Oh, the humanity indeed.
Well, we know the technology to clean up the jet engine's on its way, but at the Kyoto summit, no agreement was made to reduce emissions from aircraft. It's likely that legislation will be needed to force people to act.
Still to come, Jez Nelson gives us the ref's eye view of the future. How is science changing the beautiful game?
And why can't you time travel? You ask the question, Peter brings you the answers with a step-by-step guide to building your own time machine. But now, news of Sea Launch, the international project to fire satellites into space from a launch pad floating in the Pacific Ocean. It sounded like the plot of the next Bond movie when we first told you about it 18 months ago. But now, Sea Launch is off the drawing board and getting ready to go into orbit.
This enormous hulk used to be an oil platform. But here in St. Petersburg, the Russians are putting the final touches to what is now a sea launch pad for space rockets. A new command vessel houses mission control. From here, rockets are launched a safe distance from the platform. The British-built ship houses not only the controls, but also an assembly area for the Russian rockets. Both vessels have cost more than $500 million and will soon leave Russia for their base in California. The whole operation would have been unimaginable even just 10 years ago. It's a truly international venture, involving American, British, Russian, Norwegian and Ukrainian scientists and engineers.
That's been a really fun experience working with the Russians and learning about them learning about us, and swapping Cold War stories and space race stories. That's actually been a lot of fun for us.
When the vessels travel out to their launch site in the Pacific, the rocket will be loaded onto the platform ready for launch. They've chosen a spot on the equator, where the Earth's spin is effectively faster, so the launch will benefit from an extra slingshot effect as it blasts off. This provides an important extra boost into space, and because it saves fuel, it's cheaper too. The two vessels will leave St. Petersburg in the next few days and head off to their home base in California.
And we'll be keeping an eye on Sea Launch, counting down to the first liftoff, expected in the autumn.
Now, Mark, they absolutely rattle through this segment, which I think is a real shame, because this is surely by far what should be the most interesting thing in this episode. I mean, it's proper. It's got proper Tomorrow's World. It's proper Tomorrow's World thing. It's outer space and oil rigs and boats.
And it is a perfect encapsulation of just how safe and peaceful the 90s were. Unfortunately for us, we have come in to the middle act of a 3-act play. So we've missed out on the introduction, which I think will be fascinating to... Oh God, I hope at some point we find out more about it. I mean, I know you're going to tell us more, but like how they do it, you know, how they present it. And then and in theory, there's going to be a launch in the autumn. No, absolutely. It's because this is utter bonkers. It's fantastic. I was really disappointed at how quickly this ends, because there was just so much joy from like the gigantic oil platform that's been repurposed into like a launch pad for missiles, to this gigantic huge ship that has been repurposed into like the fabricating factory for the missiles and the mission control, and there's even a little crappy graphic showing how like they're going to mate, and one of them's going to like spunk the missile into the other and stuff like that. And I remember, because she even says like it's going to be like a James Bond film. It's like, yeah, I'm pretty sure I've seen this.
I was thinking, I think it's kind of like Thunderbirds almost.
Oh yeah, there's that as well. Yeah. Oh, this is like one of those amazing grand projects that people just seem to have so much money for when we were growing up. Oh, it's just brilliant. No, I loved it. Yeah, but it's over really quickly because, as I say, like she says, like they reported on 18 months ago, and almost to the point where like, why are they providing this update if they're going to talk about the launch in the autumn, which from the perspective of this show is only about 3 or 4 months away.
Yeah.
But it's we gain, but at the same time, it's such a tease. It's kind of heartbreaking as well. I was gonna say it's kind of heartbreaking because there's an interview with the American guy involved, and he's talking about how great it is to be working, because like it's Russians and British and Americans and Ukrainians, and just like they're all working together on this amazing project. And he talks about how much fun they've had talking about the Cold War and the space race. And I'm thinking like, suck it up, boy, because it's not going to last long.
Yeah, that was our scale. It's really tinged your sense, especially the current,
really heartbreaking,
especially in the current climate as well. Especially because it's Russia, Ukraine, and America that like particularly like sort of the level of optimism or for blue sky thinking. You've got to think it's right. Okay, yeah. Well, we could just set up our own mobile Cape Canaveral. We can take it into the middle of the ocean, and it'll all be
all we need is $1 billion. Here, have it.
I have to say, I'd never heard of it, so I was prepared to discover that it somehow failed miserably, but it didn't.
Oh,
but it didn't.
Because I was going to say, because I joked, didn't I? I said I look forward to finding out how you can't move to the middle of the Pacific for floating launch pads, because I've never heard of it, before or after. So you're going to shock me?
Yeah, no, it worked. Yeah,
wow.
It had its first successful rocket launch in March 1999. And then over the years, it had successfully launched 32 different rockets. And there were 3 failures and 1 partial failure. One of the failures was a really spectacular explosion, which demonstrated how good this system was, though, because what they would do was they would put the rocket on there, and the whole countdown and launch sequence was all entirely automated. So there would be no one on the launch platform whatsoever, and it was in the middle of the Pacific. So that thing just blew up and made an absolutely massive explosion, and absolutely, obviously, no one was harmed whatsoever. They all just sat in the command boat watching it happen, and it didn't particularly particularly badly damaged the platform. They could just needed a few repairs and it was fine. But it was anchored in middle of the Pacific, exactly on the equator, not near. I mean, kind of
near nothing. I hope
kind of near the island of. Is it pronounced Kiribati? Even though it says Kiribati, but I've heard people pronounce it Kiribati. Is that right?
I don't know. No.
It's one of those tiny Pacific island nations.
Yeah.
It was like 230 miles away from there, but that was the only sort of bit of land near it. As Peter says, the whole point of it being on the equator is that it has like a slingshot effect, which is why they did. So they actually did this for two reasons. The slingshot effect is good because the equator is moving faster than the poles and everything, like, you know, see what I mean? Like, it's got to cover the same distance, but it's bigger. So the equator is spinning at 1,670 kilometers an hour, whereas Cape Canaveral is only spinning at 1,470 kilometers an hour. So if you launch a rocket at the equator, once it gets into orbit, it will already be doing 200 kilometers an hour more than it would have been if you launched it from Cape Canaveral, which is a little bit. I mean, these rockets still needed to go 10,800 kilometers an hour, so it was only like a little bit of a boost. But the big thing for it was that they used this to launch geostationary satellites, which are the ones that go out really far and remain in place and match the spinning of the Earth, and so which are used for TV and radio and things like that. And they need to be directly above the equator because they need to match the spin of the Earth. So if you're launching from the equator, they can go straight out there without
half the job is done,
without you having to adjust. So it saves loads of fuel doing that, which meant they could be 25% heavier in terms of the payload. So it was actually really useful. So it
saves money.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Can I ask, what constitutes a partial failure for a rocket launch?
I couldn't find that out. I think
that's all I've been thinking about since you mentioned it. Is like, what is a partial failure?
It just said partial failure. What does that mean? Maybe it got into space, but then it wasn't working or something.
That still sounds like a total failure. I mean, I know a total failure is it exploding on launch, but like even like it doesn't matter. Anyway, sorry. That was just really kind of like the whole time I was nodding. I was thinking like, what's a partial failure? Yeah. How does something partially fail when it's kind of it's basically binary? It's stuff either gets up there or it doesn't. Anyway, so would you say 34 successful launches?
32 successful launches. Yeah,
32.
Yeah, and what they did, so they obviously there was 4 different companies from 4 different countries. When I looked it up, Britain isn't mentioned at all. So I don't know where they got the idea that Britain was involved.
Well, they said we built the ship.
Well, according to the thing I read, it was built by
the
Norwegians. So you've got Energia, which is a Russian space rocket company. Then you've got Boeing, who were managing it, and they provided the navigation systems and things like that. And then you had Aker Solutions, which is a Norwegian engineering firm, and they were the oil rig people. So they're the people that supplied the ship and the rig.
Okay.
And then you had SDO Yuzhnoye, also known as the Pivden Design Bureau. And they're the ones that designed and built the majority of the actual rocket itself, which is called the Zenit rocket. But the interesting thing about them is back in the time of the USSR, they were like the main people that designed all the intercontinental ballistic missiles, the world-ending nuclear warhead-filled ones. They designed all of those, including one that NATO referred to as the Spanker, which I thought was which is good.
Okay, there you go.
But their headquarters is
involvement in the...
Their headquarters is in Dnipro in Ukraine, so I guess it's probably could well be a big pile of rubble now, fortunately.
Yeah, sadly.
That's
ironically,
that's the problem. This whole thing got mothballed in 2014 after the Russians invaded.
So it was a going concern up until
2014,
Crimea.
Yeah, and then when that happened, then the whole thing just got they couldn't go.
Well, I'm amazed. That's incredible. Because I was just looking at the notes. Even you said I'm dubious I'll discover it being a roaring success in my research. It's like I've never heard of it. That's astonishing. That's incredible.
But yeah, I mean they all obviously everyone fell out in 2014, 2015. In 2015, Boeing sued the Russian and Ukrainians. Classic American thing, taking everyone to court.
So 2 nations have gone to war, so we're going to sue them for the business?
Yeah.
Sakes.
It ended up
breach of contract.
It ended up mainly being in the Russians' hands. First of all, the Americans pulled out all of the navigational equipment out of it, and then it got dragged back to Russia, and then Roscosmos pulled out all of the space launch equipment out of it, and now it's just sitting there somewhere in Russia. Somebody's bought it, some airline company's bought it, but if they ever do bring it back into service, it's going to take a huge amount of money and expertise to refit it with all the systems they require. So it seems like it's probably
it's done.
It's done. Yeah,
it's done. Yeah,
sad, really, isn't it? I mean, it's a very sad segment, really. That, and the lack of international, the fall of international cooperation and all of that. What we've lost, Mark. What we've lost.
I not least because, what's his name? Stephen Thielen says, that kind of level of cooperation. Actually, I think it might have been Peter himself saying that level of cooperation was unimaginable 10 years before this episode, and of course, it was basically unimaginable 10 years later. Yeah. It's like there's just this little moment in time when things are okay, things are all right. What did you say at the end of your notes? We can really claim when we're old that we lived through the most peaceful decade ever. And I remember thinking oh yeah, lucky for us. And I was thinking oh, that's the saddest thing I've seen written in ages. We'll be in our care homes, and in between talking about Zelda, we'll be saying we lived through this peaceful time, and they go, yeah, whatever, Granddad. Yeah. All right, next.
Now, time for you to ask one of your why can't you questions, where we try and find out how science is meeting the challenges you expect of it. We've got a huge pile of letters and emails over the past few weeks asking all sorts of questions, like, why can't you invent a teapot that doesn't drip, from William Rolfe in Dover. But this week, we've picked a question from Joe Knappett of London to put to the scientists.
Like all people, I make mistakes, and I'd like to be able to sort them out. So I'd like to be able to go back in time and correct them. So I'd like to ask, why can't you travel in time?
Well, Joe, thank you very much for your question. As you say, we've always fantasized about traveling through time, whizzing back to see what happened in the past or forward to see life in the future. We all assume it's impossible. After all, if it weren't, presumably we'd all be surrounded by visitors from the future all the time. The amazing thing is, though, that in theory, there are ways in which we could travel through time. So what is the theory? It was Albert Einstein's theory of relativity that said if you travel faster, time slows down, until when you reach the speed of light, time will stop altogether. According to Einstein, if you went faster than the speed of light, then time would actually go backwards. It sounds ridiculous. After all, how on earth can traveling faster make time go slower? But in fact, Einstein's theory has been proved right. Time does indeed slow down as you speed up, even if you're only traveling in an aeroplane. Scientists have tested Einstein's idea several times, most recently in 1996. They took 2 atomic clocks and flew one across the Atlantic in a jumbo jet at 600 miles an hour, leaving the other one stationary in London. Sure enough, when they arrived in America, time on the flying clock compared to the clock back in London had slowed by exactly the tiny amount predicted by Einstein, 40 nanoseconds. That's 1,000 millionth of a second. The trouble is, slowing down time by 40 nanoseconds isn't much good when it comes to time travel. To make time not just slow down, but to run backwards means you have to travel faster than the speed of light. So, the next question is, can you travel at the speed of light? Time to meet an expert. David Deutsch is a theoretical physicist at Oxford University. He's one of the world's leading experts on time travel. David, is there any way we'll ever be able to go at the speed of light?
Well, the prospects aren't good. Light travels about 40,000 times as fast as our fastest spaceships. And Einstein's theory says that you'd require an infinite amount of energy even to reach the speed of light, never mind to go faster. So it's impossible.
So is there any other way we can travel through time? We're used to thinking of time as a straight line. Here's the past here, through the present, to the future. But could we in some way bend time so that the future here came that much closer to the past? David, any way we could make a shortcut across here?
Well, however you do that, it's going to involve tearing the fabric of space-time. Because you can either punch a hole through here from the future into the past, and that's a wormhole, or you roll the future back into the past using the tear, and that's a black hole.
I'm very conflicted about this segment, Mark, because obviously I do find this kind of mind-bending stuff about, physics and time travel and stuff. I find it interesting to ponder. But I'm not sure this should be on tomorrow as well, because it's a general astronomy and science rather than it being a specific development or, do you know what I mean?
Well,
technology.
Initially when this came on, I feared the worst, and it is better than the worst that I feared. And actually, it's quite interesting. And even the way Peter frames it at the beginning, which is, now it's time to ask one of your why can't you questions, where we try and find out how science is meeting the challenges you expect of it. That idea, how science is meeting the challenges you expect of it, I think is a really interesting idea. Because in a sense, that's what Tomorrow's World is always about. It's like, we live in a world full of challenges. What is science doing? What can we look forward to? However, this segment is really a bit like Julian Lloyd Webber at the start, that idea of having a celebrity on. This is part of the Bertian desperate need for programs to quote unquote engage with their audience.
Yeah.
And so this is, before the idea of like you can kind of literally vote online or something like that, or ring in. This is about engaging with the audience so that there's some kind of parasocial, it's not what it is, parasocial relationship or whatever. So as a result, it's a rotten segment. But they actually engage with it. Like, it's actually one of the best made segments that we'll watch. Peter goes out and he films on the street. He goes out and he interviews, somebody who's an expert. And they break it down into really logical, bite-sized pieces. And it's quite effective. However, at the end of it, I had the same feeling you did, which is, hang on a minute, because initially I was thinking, oh, it's quite interesting. It's like, but Tomorrow's World don't talk about these kind of grand philosophical ponderances. They talk about what's going to happen, or like developments and innovations and technology. And this isn't that at all. And initially, I really shat on William Rolfe of Dover for his stupid question, why can't you invent a teapot that doesn't drip? And actually, now that we've discussed Russ, ironically, the answer to that question is much more Tomorrow's World than why can't we travel into through time.
Yeah, and I don't know whether technology has moved on since then, but I found many results for non-drip teapots when I googled them. They all seem to be. They all seem to be made of stainless steel, though. So maybe that's the secret. Yeah. Maybe William Rolfe never bought himself a stainless steel teapot. I don't know. Obviously, we do have the episode's breakout star, thow. The question setter himself, Mr. Joe Nappett.
Oh, love him.
Yeah. Who?
I just want to give him. I just want to give him a hug. Though he breaks my heart, because like you're going to tell me how old he is and stuff like that. Like all people, I make mistakes, and I'd like to be able to sort them out. So I'd like to be able to go back in time and correct them. So I'd like to ask, why can't you travel through time or travel in time? And like, it really saddens me that someone as kind of sweet and young looking as Joe Nappett has these oppressive regrets that he has this desperate need to travel back in time and fix them. That alone made me really sad, and I found it very endearing. Please don't tell me he's a wrong one.
That's an almost Michael Rodd-like desire, isn't it, to go back in time and
yeah.
I don't think did I find his age? No, I didn't find his age.
It's difficult to tell,
but I did find him on LinkedIn. And interesting here, Mark, he's from Catford, South East London, and he went to Catford Boys' School. Do you know who else went to Catford Boys' School, Mark?
Is it Danny Baker?
No, my dad.
No! Oh, wow, is that true?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't think he went at the same time as Joe Nappett, though. I think my dad's slightly
I doubt
older.
it.
But yeah, no, he's been the trustee of Catford Community Church since 2012, so he's obviously a religious chap. And he's been working for various local councils in London.
Do you think he was so dissatisfied by the answer he turned to religion?
He seemed to have started his working career in 2002. So where can we backtrack from that?
Well, I mean, that would make him similar age to us, though, in terms of like kind of finishing university, possibly at kind of 2002, 2001. So that would have him kind of early 80s, unless he kind of because that's the thing. Watching this, like he could be, when you see him being interviewed, he could be 16, but he could be 24.
Yeah, but
in that kind of,
I did also find his Facebook profile, Mark.
Also, he may just have done bad jobs he doesn't want people to know about. So his Facebook profile.
I did find his Facebook profile. So I found his most recent profile photo, Mark. And if you scroll down to the,
I'm doing it.
This is from February of this year.
Yep, Slavia Ukraini. Oh, and is that? Do you think that's the? Because I immediately had to look him up.
Yeah, I'm not. I don't agree with this. Doing your own research.
I know. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, Russell. I won't do it again. But I did see he did try and do a crowdfunding scheme for the Bluebell Railway Trust, which sadly I think only got £5.
Yes. Yeah. He was yeah.
And it's one of those things where, like, if it was live, I would have had great joy in telling everyone about it, so that we could have rallied round it. But it's dead a long time ago.
Yeah.
And in this picture, he is in a train.
Yeah.
Now, interestingly, he does have grey hair or silvery hair, but that red moustache as part of his beard, I think, indicates a similar age to us.
You think?
I do. I would say he's late 30s, early 40s.
Wow.
He's just, not as cool as us.
Yes, no, you're right. He's just giving. His target was £100, but he raised £5. I think once again, I think we've had this before. He didn't go very deep with the description. There was no real sort of.
No.
Wasn't good enough at engaging us with why the Bluebell Railway needed this money.
Yeah.
We've been to the Bluebell Railway, Mark. It's not far from where we grew up, is it?
I've seen it, but I've never been to it. No.
I've been to it once. I can't remember much about it. I only went there as a kid. The other thing I didn't like about this is that I never like it in Tomorrow's World when they try and add these sort of fun titles and music.
No, I agree. I listed them because I plan to kind of in some way meld them all together into one mega mix picture to put on Twitter and Instagram. I hated every single one of them. Because actually the thing is, because they've asked people to engage with them and ask questions, again, it seems like they have this desperate need to patronize as well. So yeah, they asked 7 questions in this kind of weird comic style, which I think you're about to tell us more about.
Well, it's the famous ad-lib typeface, Mark, which as soon as I saw it, I went, I know that. Why do I know that? Really reminds me of something. It's developed in 1961, but it was super popular in the 60s. So I think, obviously, the 90s had a 60s resurgence, didn't it? So I think that's probably where it ties in. But they used to use it all the time in the 60s. Notably, in the old Batman, when it came up, same bat time, same bat channel.
Same bat channel,
That was in that font. And the old 60s Pink Panther cartoons used it as well in the credits and stuff like that. The thing I think it reminded me of was that Clueless, the film Clueless, used it famously in its titles.
Yeah. Oh, well remembered.
But I mean, all of those are sort of comical, quite irreverent things. Nothing that Tomorrow's World should be dealing with, I don't think.
No, not at all. No. We should talk about the other star, the piece, though.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, because that's the thing. It's like, as I said, I expected it to be worse. I was surprised by how seriously they take it, and they really kind of get into it with Dr. David Deutsch.
Dr. David Deutsch. He's not the world's healthiest looking man, is he?
No, he's not. When I saw him, I was incredibly concerned. I mean, there's not caring about how you look, and then there's not caring about yourself.
Yeah.
And there is a line that he is. Well, it's like he saw Professor Shaw's office and said, "Oh, you think you can have a messy office? I'm going to become a concern for all my colleagues. That's how messy my office is going to be." Yeah.
But I also found a picture of him now as well, Mark. If you scroll down below,
I did see it. Yeah. And actually, he looks perfectly fine.
I think he's improved now. I think now he's got the grey hair, makes him more distinguished than when he had the black hair.
Same shirt though.
Yeah, you could probably only get one in that thinness of size. Absolute reverse of Craig Doyle.
He's making his way. That's probably the 3rd shirt of the 3-pack he bought from BHS. So.
But David Deutsch, well, basically one of the world's cleverest men. He's absurdly clever. His current title is Visiting Professor in the Department for Atomic and Laser Physics at the Centre for Quantum Computation at Oxford University.
Wow. That's impressive, isn't it?
He's the pioneer of quantum computing. He's the person that sort of, came up with the... Because obviously quantum computers don't really exist yet, but when they do, they will be based on all of his theory. So
that's amazing.
Yeah. And actually in 1997, I don't know whether this is why they got him on the programme, but in 1997, he actually published a book called The Fabric of Reality, which was his theory of everything. So
wow.
He managed to tie together all of the various theories of physics and biology and chemistry and tied them all together and presented what his theory of basically how everything works.
I will say this, it's like he's having a lot of fun. He looks like he's really happy to be on Tomorrow's World. And actually, he's very charismatic and he gives a really lovely explanation of his answers to the questions that are being raised. I enjoyed him. I just think it's like, I actually enjoyed this segment, probably most of all the segments, and it was the one when it came on that I immediately thought I'd hate.
Yeah.
In fact, I think I was initially when I got the episode, I was scrubbing through it and I saw the questions pop up and I nearly threw my laptop out the window.
Is that? Hang on. You just said to me earlier that you bought a new laptop. Did you actually throw your laptop out the window and had to buy a new one?
I did, yeah. I did have to buy a new one. Yeah, that's exactly what happened, Russ. Yeah.
Oh, Dr. Deutsch is a big fan of what's called the many worlds interpretation of quantum physics, which is the one that's so popular these days, with the whole multiverse idea. So I imagine he's absolutely loving all these multiverses that we have these days.
Or he's hating them.
yeah. And presumably was a massive fan of the TV show Sliders at the time. The only other notable thing about him is that he was a Brexit supporter, and the only reason we know that is because Dominic Cummings very frequently refers to him in his, he's got that mad blog that everyone.
Yes, I do. Yeah,
very frequently refers to David Deutsch. So I imagine it's the case of Dominic Cummings trying to make himself look clever by pretending that he understands all of David Deutsch's writings. But I like to think that probably David Deutsch just supports Brexit because he believes in the many worlds theory.
So, that's exactly what I was going to say. Yeah. So he just makes perfect sense.
He just loves making binary choices, but just to see how the universe splits in half.
Yeah, he's going off to live in the other one where we stay in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, obviously, I'm not going to try and explain, time travel or black holes or any of this stuff because I'm not David Deutsch. But there's a couple of things I wanted to pull out of this. Number one is that they use the folding a piece of paper method to demonstrate wormholes. And I thought, how many times have we seen that? And I was looking. Actually, it's probably not as many times as we think we've seen it. It just seems
more than once.
Well, the first time I ever saw it was in Event Horizon. Sam Neill does it in Event Horizon. But then obviously also somebody does it in Interstellar. I don't think it's what's his name, but I think it's the woman does it in Interstellar.
When she's older, yeah.
And then obviously,
the daughter.
Obviously recently in the most recent Thor film, Love and Thunder, Natalie Portman does it. But what's quite funny in that is that she says to the person that she's showing it to, "Have you never seen the films Event Horizon or Interstellar?"
Yeah.
But,
she does, yeah.
But I think maybe
one of the best bits of the film, actually.
Yeah. But I think obviously since it's been shown in films, it's something that physics professors like doing because it makes them feel like they're in a film.
Hollywood actors.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I reckon we've probably seen it in Horizon documentaries and things like that as well over the years. I bet Brian Cox has bloody done it. He's always doing stuff like that, isn't he? But not to explain that. The thing that I thought that immediately struck me is related to the previous segment, right? Because, I said in the previous segment that the equator is travelling faster than other parts. So
yes, 200 miles.
And in this, they very clearly state that it has been proven that if you travel, the faster you travel, the slower time goes. And they said that if you put a clock on an aeroplane, a very accurate clock on an aeroplane, fly it, then it will be slower than the clock that's been left on the ground. It will less time will have passed. And I thought, well, that is it. But hang on a minute. Does that mean everyone at the equator is ever so slightly younger than us? Because I mean,
relative,
because they're travelling faster and time's going slower there. And apparently, initially, when Einstein first thought about this, he thought that would be the case. But then, when he came up with his theory of general relativity, he discovered that there was a second effect. So there's two things that can make time slow down. Right? I hope you're listening carefully here, Mark. There's two things that can make time slow down. One of them is going fast, which is covered in this segment. But then the other thing is being in a gravitational field. And the closer you are to the centre of the gravitational field, the slower time goes. So that's important here because the Earth isn't a sphere. The Earth is what's called an oblate spheroid. So it's fatter at the equator, isn't it? So it's like slightly squashed, fatter at the equator. So that means the equator is slightly further away from the centre of the Earth than the poles are, right? And it just so happens, Mark, that effect, so the effect of the equator being further away from the poles cancels out the effect of it moving faster exactly. So that means that the clocks are actually identical at any point on Earth.
And now we know why John Napper found God, because that's the only explanation, isn't it?
Yeah. So
that's amazing.
The Earth is perfectly designed to not ruin our clocks, basically. Isn't that weird?
Well, I mean, that is incredible. Yeah.
So apparently, because of this effect, the core of the Earth is roughly 2.5 years younger than the surface of the Earth. Because over those billions of years that the Earth's been alive, the time has been moving ever so slightly slower at the core than it has on the surface. Interesting, isn't it?
Gosh, so it's only going to lockdown now.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh.
Blew my mind anyway.
That's really interesting. Yeah, okay. That's good. So that's the thing, that this segment genuinely was better than the rest of the show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
sadly.
I mean, give us some good films as well. Planet of the Apes is based on this whole idea, isn't it? The idea that they...
Oh, yeah, they yeah, exactly. It's them speeding through space that means that when they come back to Earth, millennia have passed, well, centuries, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that's... I think that's it from that. Are we,
No. We got to talk about Philippa.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Really lets us all down, doesn't she?
And we'll be returning to that story in 1978.
Oh, I've forgotten about that.
Yeah, I bet you have, Russ. Yeah, of course you have. Can't let her tarnish your Philippa copybook, can you, with her inky stains?
I mean,
no.
I have started to warm to her hair. I mean, when I first watched this, I wasn't a particularly big fan of her haircut. I'm starting to warm to it now. Now I've got used to it. But I don't...
That's true love, isn't it? When you can see past an attractive woman's slightly poorer haircut. Wow.
But I think it's going to be more difficult for me to see past this joke that she tells.
It's awful. I can. It's a clunker. And we'll be returning to the story in 1978. And the thing is, like, it ignores everything we've just heard.
Yeah. Do you think somebody with the, with the absolute premium dad joke telling skills of Howard Stableford would be able to pull that joke off?
Russ, I would have been cheering and stripping off my jumper in celebration if Howard had done that, because it would have been absolutely on brand. But for Philippa, and the thing is, like, she has no enthusiasm for it because she knows it's a clunker, and yet she can't commit to it. Oh, it's awful.
Yeah. Oh, well.
Speaking of awful.
Now, unless you have your very own time machine, whether you like it or not, you just can't get away from World Cup fever, even on Tomorrow's World. Last week, we brought you Techno Gym, the England team's secret weapon for fitness. Now we take a look at the future of football. How will science change the way the stars play and we watch World Cups to come? Jez Nelson kicks off.
These days, football is big business, with millions of pounds riding on certain games. It's no longer just about 22 players and a ball. So can the game cope with such high stakes? Well, now technology's been brought in to maximise the competitive advantage in everything from winning individual decisions to winning games, right through to winning fans.
This is Professor Nigel Allinson, the man the FA hope can revolutionise the game with exciting ideas for high-tech football. Top of his wish list is a way for managers to get the lowdown on team formations and tactics. He wants to tag players electronically.
If you can tag each player, each one has a small, if you like, microchip in their boot. Each player is individually identified and you can pick up those signals.
If players were tagged, then they could be tracked by a grid beneath the pitch. Managers would get highly detailed data on how individual players and whole teams were performing. Weaknesses would be exposed and opposition tactics could be analysed. These chips embedded in players' boots and the latest on the market are the first step in realising his dream of the player wired for data. It's one thing tracking players to monitor their game, but how about improving the performance of the ball? Last year, one player, Brazil's Roberto Carlos, performed a free kick so outrageous that scientists began to analyse how footballers make the ball do the seemingly impossible. Here's a brief recap of how that goal was scored.
It went a bit like this. Carlos kicked the ball with such spin that it seemed to be going straight off the pitch. It spun past an unworried wall and still looked like it was going to leave the pitch. So much so that a ball boy at the side of the goal tried to catch it, but then at the last minute it spun into the goal past a stunned keeper.
But don't despair, because science could be about to make those Brazilian-style banana shots a little bit easier. Meet RoboLeg. He's testing and retesting every ball improvement the scientists can think of. Apparently, traditional leather doesn't distribute energy from a kick as predictably as it might. The new synthetic foam ball aims to respond more accurately to the way you kick it. And we'll be seeing a brand new ball in this year's World Cup.
So, the very basics of kicking and playing have been taken apart.
But is that enough?
Just a single dodgy decision by the ref and all your science goes down the pan.
Technology is already helping. An electronic flag and buzzer system is alerting refs to off-the-ball incidents. But it won't stop there. Philip Don is one of the world's top referees. What does he want?
Eyes in the back of my head.
Now, Mark, there was two key emotions that I felt during that segment. Now, one of them, obviously, was boredom.
Of course.
But the second one, and much more to my liking, was pure vindication, Mark. Pure vindication that football is fundamentally boring. The most boring segment in an episode that was mostly boring was the segment about football.
I don't disagree with you that this is the most boring segment in football. And I even typed in the notes, and I'll tell you why I think it's the most boring. And I think it's to do with what I typed, which is something along the lines of like, I think this is how you feel when you watch football, when I was watching this. And I'll tell you why. It's because I was watching Jez Nelson, especially when he demonstrates the Roberto Carlos turn-war free kick, which is legendary. Yeah. He, and no one else involved in this segment, has watched or likes football. That's why it's dull. It is literally people who believe that football is just 22 men chasing a ball, which is a line that Jez uses in this segment and doesn't really understand the nuance. I promise you, I've been watching the World Cup, Russ, and in fact, I really do have a day job, which I am quite committed to. But the two early games today were so incredible in terms of like just the sheer emotion and drama that it saddens me when people who don't like football can't appreciate what is there to be enjoyed. But then you get segments like this, and it's like, oh yeah, I totally get it. I totally get why you don't like football, because this is rotten to the core.
That Jez Nelson bit where he's trying to describe a free...
It is in... Oh my God, it's awful.
But what it reminded me of is it's the equivalent of somebody trying to tell you about their dream. If you go,
oh, yes, very good,
It's something you can't see yourself, unless you've actually seen it yourself.
Yeah, because I sent you the clip. You've probably seen it before, but I put the clip in, and I assume you watched it. And it's incredible, and it lasts 4.5 seconds. Yeah. And actually, it's the angle from behind. You see how it whips round. It is an incredible free kick that is legendary, because Roberto Carlos basically never scored a free kick ever again in his entire life, and no one's really been able to whip the ball as much in that kind of style. And yet, Nelson's explanation of it is, it's like he's never seen it. It's like someone describing their dream to Jez Nelson, and he's now explaining somebody else's dream to us. And you're right, I don't know why they haven't got the clip. I mean, it can't have been that expensive, but then we're talking about a different era of Tomorrow's World. But yeah, I mean, even if you like football, as I do, this is so dull, because the three experts they have on are the dullest people we've had on Tomorrow's World for quite a long time, and to have them all in the one segment is a real treat.
We're not as many in suits.
Oh yeah. Actually, the most exciting thing is every single time we're introduced to a new expert, there's a crash zoom straight into the middle of their face, which is just a thrill. It's what a rush.
Yeah.
Oh. So, I mean, what do we learn from this?
It's very bitty, isn't it? It's also very bitty.
That's the thing. It's just chucking a few things together, giving it the semblance of some kind of overarching narrative that just doesn't exist. And the fabric of the piece can't take the weight of what they're trying to do to it.
No.
And it buckles so quickly. And Jez Nelson, God bless him, he's a trier. His quote unquote football skills that he shows off are awful. Really. And I wouldn't want to be filmed playing football.
No.
And having it broadcast, but I might be more inclined to do it if I didn't like football, or I didn't, I'd be like, oh, I don't care, which I fear might be true of him. I don't know. Maybe Jez Nelson is a huge football fan. Maybe he thinks he's good at football. I don't know, but he's not, or at least he wasn't then. What I found interesting, and I'm sure you probably won't appreciate quite as much, is that so this is 98. This is right at the beginning. So the Premier League started in 92. It's a big deal, but it really kicks into a higher gear now. Football as an industry, especially, we were talking about the Brexit referendum, the people talk about soft power in a way that I don't really recall them talking about 10 years ago. And soft power is things like the BBC and stuff like that, but it's also the Premier League. The Premier League is a huge soft power machine for the United Kingdom. It is easily the second largest league in the world, after the NFL, in terms of money, and it's much bigger in terms of viewing figures and stuff like that. But it is this colossus. So when he says that these days football is a big business with millions of pounds riding in certain games, I felt like a real pang of just oh God, do you remember when football was that small?
Yeah.
And now it is. I mean, as I said to you, it's Qatar have spent $250 billion reinventing their nation to host the World Cup. And there he is filming in the new den talking about millions of pounds. It is so innocent.
Well, I don't understand what use Qatar are going to have for all that infrastructure afterwards.
That's not why they're hosting the World Cup, though. They don't care about that bit. That's the least of it. Oh, let's not get into this. This is supposed to be... But like, they're not spending $250 billion rather, because they really want 8 stadia instead of 1. It's politics. That's the thing. It's like what's been fascinating, actually, especially in the build-up to Qatar, you know, as an avid fan of American politics, like so many online, New York Times, but also like online magazines that I read, like The Atlantic and stuff like that, are writing big in-depth pieces about how you as an American need to understand that soccer is the biggest thing in the world. And by that they mean it's like everything, it is like a black hole and it sucks everything into it. It is so gigantic outside of the States that it is politics, it is culture, it is art, it is finance, it is fraud, it is corruption, it is everything.
Yeah.
Everything can be summed up by soccer because it is so huge. And as fascinating as it is to read it from the outside perspective, most of me thinks like it's fucking heartbreaking. It's just supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be, as I said to you last time when we finished recording, it's like the World Cup for me is honestly one of the most simple, fun things in my life. I know there's that wonderful phrase, like a lot of people measure their lives through World Cups, but this is a World Cup measured through lives. That's sickening. You know, it's like, you know, every 4 years I look forward to the Euros, but there's something about a World Cup that's even magical. Even on Saturday, I was at my cousin Keane's house, and we sat, you know, it was something we planned for ages, and we sat down and we watched it. But you just can't get away from the sadness and the heaviness that comes with this particular World Cup. But like it's just as a result, this whole segment, as boring as it is just like is joyously naive. Yeah, they had no way of predicting what football in the 21st century was like, because it's everything. Yeah. There is no tomorrow's world. There's just football.
The corrupting influence of money, isn't it? Really, basically.
Yeah. But on a scale that was unimaginable in 1998. You know, in 1998, you know, they thought football was already like, well, it's just too much money, and now it's like you shouldn't really complain about footballers earning hundreds of thousands of pounds a week, because the alternative is that the money goes to horrifically corrupt owners. The footballers absolutely should be getting all this money because they're about the only decent people left.
Yeah.
Not least you have, you know, your Marcus Rashford, who fed countless hundreds of thousands of children during lockdown just by piping up and pointing out how crass and heartless the government was by closing programs because we were in lockdown. It's like, give him the money. Don't give it to owners.
You sounded almost like old Rockman Bob Geldof then suddenly with your give him the money.
Give us your fucking money. Anyway, so back to the segment, because oh really? I don't know. Like, what do they even talk about? So it's a flag. It's a linesman flag that you can press a button.
Let's go through.
Oh, you got a list.
Let's go through these in order, shall we, Mark?
All right, yeah. So otherwise,
we start with Professor Nigel Allinson.
Oh yeah,
MBE. He comes on and he's obsessed with the idea of putting chips in the play. He's like the Bill Gates of football. He wants to put microchips in the players.
Do you know what it reminded me of? Actually, sorry, it reminded me of the Day-to-Day sketch, which is the guy who turns the murder victim into a robot, and he dreams of like one day running a village, and he has this tower and he can control them all. And they said, "Why do you want to?" He goes, "But I want my tower." And that's what he was like. I want a chip in every footballer, and I'm going to control them. You know, that's how it felt. Like he was obsessed with chips.
Yeah. Because he starts off wanting to put them in the players, and then he comes back later on saying he wants to put it in the ball as well.
Which has happened this World Cup. There is a chip in the ball now.
Yes, well, that was what I was going to say.
Oh, sorry.
Well, no. I mean, please stop me if I'm wrong with any of this research, Mark. Obviously,
of course,
this is the most cursory of all the research I did because I couldn't get through it quick enough.
That's saying something.
What's quite interesting about Nigel Allinson is that he's got a massive biography on his page at the University of Lincoln, where he is these days, because he's a professor there, and he mentions his Tomorrow's World appearance on his.
Does he?
Yeah. But he doesn't mention football anywhere. There's no mention of football on that page at all. His big interests are imaging technology, image sensors, and medical imaging. So he's done loads of stuff in those fields, but nothing to do with football. Yeah. But I can't
believe he doesn't want to be associated with this amazing segment.
Well, I mean, still mention Tomorrow's World, unless he's turned up in previous episodes.
Might be done more than one. Yeah.
The players in football still aren't chipped. But the ball, yes, you said the ball it's been chipped in 2 World Cups so far as I could tell. The last one, 2018, and this one. There are old friends who we've seen a couple of times before, RFID chips. And in the last one, it was used as a location thing. Which caused a fuss. I never heard about this, but you must have heard about this because Vladimir Putin presented Donald Trump with one back when Trump was president. And then a load of people in America got worried that meant Putin would be able to listen in and track Trump wherever he went.
Which is obviously stupid because all you had to do was follow him on Twitter.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And also, that clearly means that none of these people had listened to our previous episodes where I explained how RFID chips work and how they only work very, very close up. So the only way this works because the football pitch was full of sensors. But anyway, they've not done that this time. In 2022, they're relying on camera technology to see where the ball is. But they still have a chip inside the ball, but the chip is just a inertia sensor. And the idea is that they'll know exactly when the ball is being kicked. And then they can combine that with the cameras, and then they can instantly tell when a player is offside. So that's what they're using it for this time. So it's kind of I don't know, but well, not necessarily a step back, but I guess a different implementation.
It's actually it's a smarter use of the technology, even if it feels a step back. It's like because there's always been a debate. It's like when exactly, especially with VAR, and you're drawing lines on pictures. When was the ball kicked? And now they know for certain because there's a sensor that instantly says the ball was kicked at this point. So it does seem smart. There's been a few utilizations of it in the World Cup. Some like laughably specific, but like I think it's quite clever. Yeah. Technology of football. Yeah. It's always brilliant.
Although obviously if you type into Google microchips in football, it just brings up loads of things to do with the NFL because they are chipped up to the eyeballs in the NFL. Absolutely. Chips coming out
They're
their
more
ears.
chip than man.
Yeah. Because there's that weird thing about American sports, isn't there? There's this weird obsession with statistics and analysis.
Yeah.
To the point where the more they can analyse it, the better. So they just introduce more and more technology. So
one of my favourite sports statistics is the yak, which is yards after carry, which is basically like someone catches the ball, how far do they go? And they've given it, not only did they measure it, but they gave it a funny acronym, yak. This guy's the yak master.
Yeah. I suppose when you have sports where the play stops all the time, you just have to have something to
entertain.
Yeah.
Oh, well, there's so many statistics in soccer, football now as well. Just like XP and all that kind of stuff, and expected goals conceded per save or something like that. It's
XP.
It's gone mad.
That's like a computer game thing.
XG. No, XG. Did I say XP?
Yeah,
XG. Yeah, XG.
Yeah.
XG. Expected goals. Yeah. XP. I think wasn't that the Xbox?
I would say in most computer games, a character will have experience points XP, won't they?
Yeah.
Use and stuff. Yeah, that's chips. We then move on to the Adidas Robo Leg, which gets very short shrift, but not before we've definitely seen that it's Adidas. Big clear letters. But it's a robotic leg boot in the ball. There's not much more explanation than that, is there? And some sort of brief mention of the construction of the ball as well.
Yes.
The Robo Leg was built in 1995, and I found reference to it in 2016. So there's every chance the Robo Leg is still going.
Okay.
So I wonder how many balls it's kicked. Might have kicked as many balls as the distance from here to Pluto.
To Pluto and back.
Yeah. This year's World Cup ball, which I looked up, £130 on the Adidas website, the pro version, the actual version that they're using on the pitch. That's 70% polyurethane, 20% recycled polyester, 10% viscose cover with an e-thermally bonded seamless construction. There you go, Mark.
Can't argue with that, can you? Hey?
No. I don't know whether that means it bends more or less. I don't know. You know better than me. But then
there's not been many goals from outside the box, so probably not as much as you think. Yeah.
Then we get to my favourite bit, the referee's buzzer flags.
Phil Don.
No, the buzzer flags before we did.
Oh, yeah.
I looked up how much a set of these buzzer flags.
Oh, gosh, I've no idea. No, how much?
Have a guess.
You
get 2 flags.
2 flags.
2 flags and a buzzer to attach
and the thing the referee can...
And a manual.
Gosh. Well, I mean, if they're like 20 years old, and they must have sold thousands, because you need... So 2 flags and a buzzer thing, 250 quid.
£320 is the cheapest I found.
I assumed it would be expensive, so that's why I went 250.
I found another place that's selling them for 440. Like, do you think it's because no one likes referees that they've just added like a sort of they've bumped it up as a tax? Yeah.
Twat tax.
Speaking of referees, I didn't really like the look of. This Philip Don man comes on.
Yeah, I remember Philip Don.
Yeah, I mean, you probably know more than me. Apparently, he's one that counted amongst the top 100 football referees of all time.
Can I stop you there? Who the fuck spends time working out who the top 100 referees?
It was like
unbelievable.
It was like the International Board of Football Statistics or something like that. He was also a headmaster at the same time, which I'm sure you know.
That's what I remember. I was going to say, because he gives off real headmasterly vibes, doesn't he? Yeah, I remember him. A lot of them were teachers and headmasters.
It's not a surprise, is it? That's a sort of personality type, isn't there?
Yep.
That fits both of those things. But what I did like is the Wikipedia article about him says he became head of refereeing at the FA in the late 1990s. And then it says he favoured a hardline, by-the-book style of refereeing. Like as if he was like the police chief in the American cop film.
Nelson!
Yeah, and then where do we go now?
Martin Trees.
Oh, yeah, Martin Trees, yeah.
Martin Trees.
Martin Trees is the one that has the most personality, I think. He seems most keen.
Yes.
But I mean, what he's talking about is so far in the future. The idea of virtual cameras.
Yes.
You're so far in the future that they're still not.
No. It was actually something that was proposed for this World Cup 12 years ago. It was like, actually, you at home could like log into the stadium and like pick a seat and they'd sell virtual tickets. Didn't happen.
No. I mean,
yeah, because it's nonsense.
I mean, I can see a point in the future where it would be conceivably possible. I mean, you're probably quite close to being able to do it now. But I mean, the idea that they could do it in 1998 is insane. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Where or why he's there promoting this.
I've also thought it's a bad idea. Like, I mean, I go to live football matches. In fact, I'm going to one on Boxing Day, and you go because the atmosphere and the sense of communing with like-minded people who all share a passion. And I meet... Yeah, Russ, because I love shanking away fan. No, because it's just a really, at its best, it's incredibly joyous, and at its worst, it's well, we all like to feel hate, and and I often meet Dan Rutzi and stuff like that, and beforehand, which is always nice to catch up with him, and the view can be really good because like you can be quite close up, but like it's a better view on TV. Like if you really want to know what's happening in a game on the individual level, television is much better. In the stadium, you get a real sense of how strategies work and stuff like that, but you don't necessarily understand what's going on, especially if you're at one end or the other. So this idea of like, oh, everyone wants to feel like they're sitting in the stand. They want to feel like they're sitting in the stand for the atmosphere, which you cannot replicate at home.
Yeah.
You can, even if you fill a room full of people, your family and friends, you're not replicating the same feeling of physically being in the stadium in the presence of the players. So I feel like that completely misconstrues what people want from two very different experiences. They are not the same thing, because watching at home can be brilliant. And actually, in a weird sense, when you watch a huge match on television, you are communing with more people because you will be sharing the same experience and memory down the line than the people who are in the stadium who are having a different experience. To my mind, the live experience is still better, but not everyone can go to it. It's like I think it feels to me like a fundamental misreading of exactly what people want, which is why I think is another reason it just hasn't happened.
Yeah,
because are people going to really sit at home on their couch with a VR headset on the back row of the upper tier, virtual tier of the stadium, when they could take the VR set off and watch the BBC cover brilliantly? I don't see that, especially if you have to pay for the privilege, a virtual ticket. I don't know. I just it seems like nonsense to me.
It kind of reminds me of that. I remember when the idea of picture-in-picture was first.
Oh yeah,
like the idea you could watch multiple different sport events at the same time, all on your screen at once. And like people had like tried it out 3 or 4 times, and then just
novelty. Yeah,
as soon as the novelty wore off, they just didn't do it because it's no good.
And maybe not around this time, but like maybe in 5-6 years time, especially on Sky, when Sky Digital came around, you could pick a dedicated channel that would just follow one player.
Yeah.
And you could watch, a Zinedine Zidane. In fact, there is a film about Zinedine Zidane. I can't remember where, it is just a documentary about Zinedine Zidane playing one game, and it's just the cameras on him. I've never seen it. Apparently, it's very good. It was on BBC 4. It gets great reviews because it is almost poetic. However, what you don't get is literally the game.
Yeah.
You never see anything because, Zidane doesn't score he's not between the sticks saving things. So, even that was a novelty.
Yeah.
all novel. It's like people just want to see what happens, and I think everyone seems always desperate to kind of improve things when there is no need. Now, I'm not being a Luddite. I just like tomorrow's England Wales. People aren't tuning in because they're desperate to see some new technology. They're tuning in to share a live moment that can only be experienced once, that will be shared by millions of people as well.
Surely the appeal of football, if there is such a thing, is its simplicity.
100%. It is such a simple game.
Yeah. But Martin Trees, I didn't really find out much about Martin Trees. He seems to have done lots of boring jobs. He's on LinkedIn. He's done lots of boring jobs that I won't go into, mainly like legal and business stuff. Nothing to do with football or virtual anything. At the moment, he does some sort of probate company. I don't know.
Oh, wow.
But I thought the one interesting thing about him was that he owns a dairy farm, a cattle farm. He set one up in 2001. It's still going, and it's an award-winning cattle farm.
Oh,
which
okay.
he runs at the same time as running all these other businesses that he does. Strange, isn't it?
That is very strange.
He has does virtual films of the cows mooing or whatever.
Yeah. Cows mooing.
Yeah.
Yep.
But then that is mercifully that segment ended. But then Philippa gives us a little coda at the end. She suggests that in the future, at all football matches, people will be given Sony miniature TVs, the Sony Watchmen, at their seats so they can see replays on them.
Well, with such exciting developments in televised coverage, the stadium is fighting back to find ways of luring people to real matches. And here's one way they're hoping to do it, putting one of these in every seat. Handheld TVs like these are going to be the norm in the football stadium of the future. The new Olympic Stadium in Sydney is already planning to install the system. Instant replays from any angle while you're there at the live game. You won't know where to look.
Now, you came up with one reason why they wouldn't work, which is that, people just rip them out and chuck them at each other.
Or nick them, take them home.
Or nick them. The other reason they don't work is because a small 3cm by 3cm screen is not really a good way of watching a replay of a live sport. I immediately looked at them and thought, well, that's just pointless.
Yeah.
Now, you have huge kind of 4K gigantic mega screens. That's how you watch a replay, because this little small, postage stamp thing is next to useless.
Yeah. Imagine how much more costly. I mean, how many seats are in a stadium? It's tens of thousands, isn't it?
Yes, it is, Russell.
So how much more costly tens of thousands of Sony Watchmen mini TVs would be than just one Jumbotron?
Well, no, you normally have two or three because because obviously there's people at different ends. But absolutely, and especially when that giant TV can be a really high quality thing. Oh, it just annoyed me because again, it's one of those things where like whoever's come up with this idea really has no idea how people enjoy sports in a live setting, because especially something on the Olympics, if you go to the Olympic Stadium in Sydney or the London, or if you go to Paris in 2024, there are many events on in the athletics at any one time, some of which will be in front of you, some of which will be the opposite side of the stadium. Having a tiny television does not help you understand what's happening. No. You need those big end TVs to kind of create, again, the idea is like for an event that's going on, that's right in front of you, you always have, when you see the long jumpers and they start clapping, they start doing the arms in the air to kind of get a rhythm. It'll be a quarter of the stadium that joins in with that because they're the ones who are right in front of it. Unless it's on the big screen, at which point everyone goes like, we can watch this too. We're all in now. And then, again, you have that sense of communality in an event.
Which you can't do when you're clutching a Sony Watchman in your hand.
No. Yes, you're right. Unless you grab two of them and start smashing them together.
Yeah. Do we think that maybe this idea was thought up by one of the marketing people from Sony?
For Sony Trinitron? Yes, Russell. Yes. Though actually, I don't think they're an Olympic sponsor. But there you go. I thought it was Panasonic. Anyway.
Backhander, Mark.
Have we finished?
Well, I was just going to say that if you wanted to buy...
Oh, yeah, how much were they?
Well, these days, I couldn't find out how much they were then, but these days they are absolutely worthless because they only pick up analog TV.
Of course, which doesn't exist.
So they're merely a curiosity. If you've got one, all we'd see is static. But then that, I think... is it?
You have my permission to edit down what I said if you found any of it boring.
No,
not any of it. That's
it's
unfair.
Your birthday treat, Mark.
It's my birthday treat. Okay. From October. Thank you.
I'm going to ensure that this is the most boring episode we have ever done. And then we can.
And that's nothing to do with me. You picked this episode.
We can never talk about football ever again.
Perfect. What a treat. And is there anything else we want to say about the episode? Oh, the end credits. Can we talk about those? Because I put in the picture right at the beginning because...
Didn't we mention that at the beginning?
We mentioned that we were going to mention it.
Oh.
Because the reason was, you and I have watched credits before, and we've never discussed them because often it will list the presenters in a kind of seniority. So it'll probably, I definitely think there's been times where it's been Raymond Baxter but often it's in alphabetical order. But this is different because there are 5 presenters in total, and they've been grouped in 4 different ways, presented by Peter Snow and Philippa Forrester. Exactly. But interestingly, their names are larger than with Craig Doyle, Anya Sitaram, and then at the bottom, and Jez Nelson. Now, I think Jez Nelson is getting the famous Hollywood bump there from the.
I mean, this is
final
got very like Hollywood all over, isn't it? Like where their agents have negotiated.
Correct. Yeah. Well, I mean, Peter. Come on, Peter's the star of the show now. He's got to be top. But then Philippa's negotiated. But my font should be as big as Peter's, but definitely bigger than the other 3. And then Jez Nelson. Well, hang on a minute. I'm going to go with the and, which always reminds me of one of the best gravestones, which is Jack Lemmon, whose gravestone is simply and Jack Lemmon.
What would you, if you had to have that sort of credit thing, what would you go for? Because it was you've got and, or you've got
with,
or featuring.
Featuring. Featuring's always someone new.
Special guest star.
Special guest star was good.
Introducing.
Not introducing.
No.
I think I would never. I don't think my ego would let me believe I would headline.
No.
Special guest star always feels like it's a cul-de-sac. I think I'd go with and. I think I always quite like the and.
I like it when none of the previous ones, they've just had the actors' names, but then when it's and, it's always and the actor's name as. And then the character's name.
Yeah.
That's always a good one. Yeah. That's a nice little combo.
That is a good one. You're absolutely right. Actually, that is a sweet deal. You're prime pumping people's interest, aren't you? Yeah.
Well, speaking of cinema, shall we
Yeah, let's do it. Let's get out our crunching number machines, Russ. And then talk about the cinema box office.
Well, as always with this era, it's very easy to find the info. So we've got a lovely top 15. Number 15, Wild Things.
Okay. Yeah. Sexy.
Number 14, The Big Lebowski.
Okay.
Number 13, Star Kid. That looks...
Star Kid?
I've never heard... That looks shonky as hell. That looks... sort of the mid-80s child science fiction era.
Yes, Last Starfighter, Flight of the Navigator.
Really looks like something from that era.
Wow, I've never heard of Star Kid. Shonky as all heck.
Yeah. Number 12, Blues Brothers 2000.
Oh, amazing. I didn't know it came 2 years out before 2000. That's amazing.
I reckon that most things named after the millennium or 2000 actually came out before it. Because as soon as the millennium was over, then...
It was gone. It was dead. Yeah.
Number 11, Mouse Hunts, the old Lee Evans film.
Yeah.
Number 10, The Mighty Titanic.
Oh, wow. God, because that came out in 97, so it's still around. Incredible.
Number 9, Dark City.
Okay.
Kiefer Sutherland, isn't it? That one?
Yeah. Rings a bell.
Number 8, The Replacement Killers. Chow Yun-Fat's.
Oh, okay.
Number 7, Scream 2.
Ooh.
Number 6, The General.
Oh my God, I remember that. We were working in the cinema when that came out.
Number 5, Wishmaster.
Yeah.
Number 4, Red Corner.
Richard
Gere film. That doesn't ring a bell.
No recollection.
Number 3, Sliding Doors.
Oh.
Which presumably Dr. David Deutsch is a big fan of, because that's once again is another multiverse thing, isn't it? Number 2, Deep Impact. And number 1, The Wedding Singer.
Oh, nice. Okay. Pop chart?
Well, there's at least one song in here that you'll like, Mark. I know that for sure.
Gosh, can't wait to be offended by whatever you picked.
Number 10, How Do I Live by Leanne Rimes.
Mm-hmm.
Number 9, Last Thing on My Mind by Steps. Number 8, Stranded by Lutricia McNeil. Number 7, Dance the Night Away by the Mavericks. Number 6, Come Back to What You Know by Embrace. Number 5, Under the Bridge, stroke Lady Marmalade by All Saints.
Wow. Yep.
Number 4, Feel It by Tampere Feach Maya. Is that a cover of? Is that the one?
I don't know.
I feel like that was some sort of sample. The Jacksons, Can You Feel It? I think maybe.
Oh, I can hear something in my mind's ear.
Don't know. That
might be
what
you
guess,
think.
But I feel like there was something like that. Yeah. Number 3, Horny by Moose T versus Hot and Juicy.
Yeah.
Number 2, The Boy Is Mine, Brandy and Monica. And number 1, one of your favourite ever songs, a Irish classic, C'est La Vie by Bewitched.
I knew it was heading there, Russ. Well done. Yeah. Brilliant. What a classic tune. Prices?
Well, I couldn't find any decent prices for 1998, apart from, of course, the Argos catalogue, which I found a lovely copy of.
Of course. Yo.
And the most expensive kettle in the Argos catalogue, in this particular edition, is a Russell Hobbs 3181 Sovereign traditional kettle.
Sovereign.
Maximum capacity 1.8 litres. Multi-directional base for left or right-handed use. Rapid boil, energy efficient Optec disc element. Scale resistant element, water level indicator, stainless steel body, cord storage, 3-level safety precaution, neon power indicator, £54.25.
Get back in your box, Russell Hobbs. That is shocking. They should be ashamed of themselves.
Blair's Britain, Mark. Blair's Britain has sent the costs of Russell Hobbs flying through there.
God, I mean, you say that, like, we'd all go running back to it if we had the option. Magazine covers.
Well, Dr. David Deutsch would be a really big fan of this month's New Scientist magazine.
Yep.
Because the headline is All Possible Universes Exist, Even Triangular Ones. And it's about the multiverse theory. So,
what's a triangular universe?
Don't know. I've not read the magazine, but yeah.
Okay.
But it's
cool.
something to do with multiverses. Scientific American's got a picture of, I don't know, like a massive beam shooting through the centre of the universe or something like that. Colliding galaxies fuel the blaze of a quasar. Oh, it's a quasar then. It's a picture of a quasar.
It's good. So you've seen the picture but not read the words underneath. Yeah. Brilliant.
Popular Science just has a... You like this, Mark? Popular Science just has the word choppers in big letters. A picture of a helicopter.
Okay.
Picture of a helicopter.
Brilliant. Oh, disappointing.
Oh, and also one of the smaller stories is 100% safer beef.
Brilliant.
Time magazine. Picture of Jim Carrey. It says Jim Carrey breaks out and gets seriously funny in The Truman Show, Hollywood's smartest summer movie.
Gosh, I wouldn't call Truman Show seriously funny. I think it's a brilliant film, but it's not funny.
It's one of the
it has funny bits in it, but it's
one of the few ones of his films that I can put up with, to be honest. I always found him incredibly irritating, but I mean that's a good enough concept for a film that I was able to put up with.
It's a great film. He is brilliant. I think he's brilliant because of his overperformance. His seriousness weighs against his overperformance earlier on, if that makes sense. That's a really clumsy way of saying it, isn't it?
I'm keeping it in. 14 times, cashing in on Deep Impact, I think. It's got a picture of an asteroid approaching Earth with the headline, Wipeout, has science's doomsday theory bitten the dust? I'm more interested in some of the smaller headlines there.
As always.
Particularly, free energy harnessing the power of P and the ultimate heresy, secret cult that hates Christ.
Wow. Okay.
And Private Eye. Now, you'll like this one, Mark. Not a lot. It's got Emperor Akihito of Japan. Picture of him.
Mm-hmm.
Headline, Akihito flies in. And for some reason he's saying, I'm very sorry, but I'm not going to apologise. And that's all okay. But then I think maybe the headline below, not sure it'll fly these days. It says, nice nip in the air.
Oh my God. You serious?
Yeah.
Oh gosh. All right.
It's a bit dodgy, isn't it?
Smidgen.
And Playboy, the Babes of Baywatch, which you could imagine they could do every month, really, couldn't they? Really, but it's you've got Pamela Anderson, Gina Lee Nolan, Donna D'Erico, and either Tracy or Tony. No, can't remember her name.
Ironically, you can't pull it.
Yeah, all there in their Baywatch gear on the front cover.
Brilliant. All right, then. So what was the most important invention?
Well, sea launch.
Yeah, I'm delighted about sea launch, actually. Delighted. That was quite a thrill. This is kind of actually as much as we enjoy hating on stuff, and I know other people enjoy listening to us. Actually, the thing I really enjoy most is when you discover stuff that secretly has been really brilliant.
Yes, yeah, definitely, yeah.
Even if it is kind of a heartbreaking little bubble in time, that's really fabulous. Most worthless invention. There's lots of pull from here.
Yeah.
Is it the music lessons? Is it the I mean it has to be the what you call it, the Cranfield combustor.
Cranfield combustor.
Yeah.
It's sank without trace.
Yeah, has to be, doesn't it?
I think so. Yeah.
Most inaccurate prediction of the future is so much.
There's so many of those, isn't there?
So
Which
many
is weird
things,
because this episode is probably closer to the future than a lot of them.
I know, and yet they really, it's a swing and a miss, isn't it, for so many things.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the idea that we probably would have, or the subtext that we would have kind of secretly have dealt with climate change by now.
Yeah.
There's Joe Nappett's fundraising expedition for the Bluebell Railway.
I think,
there's most of the football stuff.
Most of the football stuff. I think the worst one being Philippa saying that all stadiums from now on are going to have
we'd have
Sony mini TVs in the audience. I mean, even like Peter Snow suggesting that at some point in the future we will have harnessed enough energy to be able to spin a black hole.
Do you know that was the thing, especially listening to that for the third or fourth time there. Every time I thought like, oh, they're just sort of accepting this as like perfectly reasonable. Because even says like, well, there you go, Joe. It's probably not the answer you were looking for. It might be. It's like, i.e., it might happen. It's like, based on what you said, no. It'll only happen if we manage to spin a black hole. And even like Peter was saying, like, oh, like, yeah, but then you have to get out of the black hole. He goes, oh, well, it'd be possible we spin it. It's like, what? I thought the whole point of a black hole was like nothing left.
Yeah.
Oh, anyway, sorry, you're just winding me up again about that. Do you have a definitive answer? I'm very happy to include every single item.
Yeah.
All right, brilliant. Worst screw up by a presenter? I mean, it was every time per Jez hit the ball for me, but I mean, it could have been anything. Or is it Philippa's hair?
Well, I was going to say Philippa's joke, but it's not really a screw up. It's not really.
Oh my god! I mean, I think that's right, isn't it? Is it a screw up? Well, I mean, it's deliberately meaning it doesn't mean you haven't screwed up. Is that what you thought, Russ? Did you think if you didn't mean it, it's not a screw up, or if you think if you mean something, it's not a screw up?
I don't know. I mean,
I've got bad news.
I mean, just the decision to say it. I mean, she surely could have just.
Oh
gone,
yeah, that's the screw up.
Saying it.
Just like rip her microphone off, just storm out the studio. Yeah. Just walk up and down some gantries until she's out of shot. Yeah, I'm happy with that. I think that's absolutely correct. Best attempt at making something boring interesting.
They didn't really make much of an attempt in this episode, did they? Really?
Could I put my hand up for being forced to have a crappy segment where you must engage with the public and then actually putting effort in, which would be the why can't you?
Yeah.
They put real effort into that, and really it shouldn't even be on the program. just suggesting that as a possible.
Yeah, got to be in it.
Okay. Best use of music?
Well, this is weird because I feel like it's got to be the use of the music in the music experiment.
Yes.
Because it's use of music in an experiment. But I'm still very dubious that it actually has any use.
So I'm happy to agree that it's not that. So is it just Massive Attack because we recognise the song?
Maybe it's the use of that one piece of Mozart that immediately made me think of how terrible episode 7 was.
Yeah,
which
okay.
Then, in comparison, this episode isn't so bad.
It's Tomorrow's World's warning from history. Is it a warning from the past not to watch the future episodes? Yeah. Okay. Best or worst use of furniture?
Hang on a minute. What do we see? I mean, there was Julian Lloyd Webber's music stool we were sitting on. There was also, I mean, the studio is absolutely full of crap furniture.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it?
It's all the crap furniture in the studio.
Yeah, absolutely.
Unnecessary.
I completely agree. Most notable clothing. Now, you mentioned in the sea launch thing, there's somebody who's in a full hazmat suit.
Yeah.
Which is always a good use of clothing.
But
there's also Julian Lloyd Webber's horrific jacket with the weird kind of white lined filigrees on the lapels.
Which makes him look like a country and western star rather than
Which makes him look like a country and western star. Absolutely.
But I think in terms of amount of chat it's generated, it's got to be Craig Doyle's absurdly large shirt, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, very good. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, absolutely correct. I'd forgotten about that. Yeah, perfect. Did we see anything in the episode that made it into the future? Well, I mean, Sea Launch, I think, is brilliant.
Yeah, I mean,
that's a delight to hear about that. Football made it through.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things the football did, didn't it? Robo Leg did.
The flags.
The flags did.
And the idea of stuff being chipped and tracking things kind of made it through.
Yeah, and Joe Nappett did.
Joe Nappett, God bless you, Joe Nappett. Yeah.
Yeah, no, so a few things.
Yeah. And no doubt somebody out there is still trying to say that they need to spend money on an experiment to find out if music can make people smarter. That will never not be in the future. What does this episode tell us about the 3rd of June, 1998?
Everyone is absolutely struck down with World Cup fever, Mark. That's for sure. No
It's
doubt
amazing
about
any
that.
work's been done. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, maybe that's why the office is empty, actually. Maybe normally in normal episodes, that office is
Yeah.
full, but actually everyone's out watching the World Cup.
Which hasn't started for, well, it doesn't start for another week, but...
I think in terms of Tomorrow's World, this is not vintage Tomorrow's World in any way, shape or form. But I
No.
do think that the sea launch segment is such a perfect encapsulation of why the 90s was a wonderful era in terms of actual important things like people getting on and, you know, being optimistic.
Not killing
and
each other.
and being interested in, you know, good stuff like science and engineering and working together and everything like that, you know. So that was good.
What a great decade. All right, then. Let's get on to the tropes. Noting, of course, that I've retired one of them. Presenter having to speak over loud sounds. And yes, absolutely. We have a lot of that in the... Anya is basically out on the tarmac, Heathrow Airport, for most of her time.
When she's nattering to Professor Greenhalgh.
Yeah.
They've got the engine running. It's not as loud as it should be, though, I don't think. He's wearing ear defenders, but...
No.
But it still clearly is a loud sound. Or maybe they've just got better at ensuring that you can hear people over loud noises at this point.
It's not as loud as when she's actually on the tarmac at Heathrow Airport. Something to do with oil rigs.
Yes.
You're damn straight. Suspiciously obvious brand name and the ad-free BBC. Well, I mean, for me, there were two particularly egregious examples. There's the Adidas boot and bowl that we watched during the high-tech football section, but then British Airways is littered throughout the episode.
Yeah, good point, yeah.
So, yeah. Clear and blatant lying?
Clear
and blatant lying.
I don't know whether anybody...
No one's blatantly lying. Everyone believes what they say, unless Professor Shaw is playing the long game. Everyone actually seems to believe what they're talking about. So no, okay. Evil farmers.
Oh,
There's no
wait a
evil
second.
farmers. Oh, wait.
With the lying.
You think it through? Yeah.
Julian Lloyd Webber saying that playing music is the most difficult thing a man can do, or whatever he says.
It's not quite that bad, but you're not wrong either. It's basically what he's implying, isn't it? He is basically implying he's a super genius. But the thing is, I think he believes it, though, Russ. But it's not true, is it? All right, tick. No evil farmers. It's just too late in the Tomorrow's World timeline, isn't it?
I mean,
there's definitely a point where they just stop. They just stop talking about agriculture forever.
I mean, it turns out one of them is an award-winning farmer, but there's no suggestion he's evil.
No. Casual sexism. Shockingly, in an episode as late as 1998, there 100% is. And it's all thanks to one of our fantastically charismatic football experts, Martin Trees. He's the guy who we were just talking about with the amazing farm. Constantly refers to the audience of football game as he. He'll be able to choose the outside broadcast director's view of the world plus all other cameras, or he could choose to sit by huddle in the dugout, or he could choose to follow Paul Ince in the field. There is no indication whatsoever that any woman in Britain is going to watch the football, which wasn't true then, certainly isn't true now, and it's surprising. It's surprising. It really felt like a punch to the ears, whereas like in the 60s and 70s, it's kind of fun. The casual sexism. In the late 90s, it just, I don't know, it's a bit unacceptable, to be honest.
I would also say that the fact that Philippa's second in the call sheet is...
Yes, absolutely. That was a very good observation. It's true. Though, it's that's wrong. I mean, even if Peter Snow is the big ticket signing in a football sense, Philippa is the presenter of this program. Actually, she does most of the legwork. Lab space filled with darkness and coloured lights. Not coloured lights, but Dr. Deutsch's office is, or Professor Deutsch office is completely pitch black, except for two very stark lights, which I don't know. Hey, it's a choice.
They've stopped doing like the weird purpley pink colour to
yeah. There's no gel. There's no gels in the lights. They're just the bright white lights. Yeah. No Dutch angle that I can remember.
I don't think so.
Item presented from a gantry. You're damn straight. Episode ends on a damp squib. It's got to be a yes, hasn't it?
Oh, speaking of which, Mark, I've read something we didn't mention. They don't go to The football pitch.
Oh, yes.
The football pitch
No.
don't go to QPR, which we
No.
would expect because that's the football
Yes.
pitch next door to the BBC television centre. They go to
Yep.
Millwall.
They do. They go to Millwall, which, as I pointed out, maybe unknown to you, but was absolutely the other stadium that BBC always filmed at throughout this time. And I said to you, it's like for the longest time when the continuity announcer would talk about how, coming up soon is a match of the day or after the news is a match of the day, the still image was always a picture of a football at the New Den for what felt like decades. So it now seems obvious to me that even the BBC were aware of the fact that they always filmed at QPR, so they had to be seen to film anywhere else.
Well, I was just thinking maybe it's because QPR banned the BBC from their pitch shortly after that really embarrassing firework display they put on there.
Yeah, never darken our door ever again. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Lasers?
No.
Nope. Magnets?
No.
Boats?
Yes.
You're damn straight. There we go. So actually, that was a better hit rate than I expected, especially from this era. Yeah, that's a good 50-50 there. So that's that. That's the 3rd of June, 1998. The third time we've done that date, Russ. The 3rd of June. Happy birthday to my brother, who is turning 11 today.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is weird that we've done 3/3 of June, isn't it? I wonder what the chances of that happening are. Well, Mark, I will allow you to get back to watching your football matches. Obviously, the good thing about us doing an evening record, again, after a couple of afternoon ones, is that it's now almost my bedtime. And watching that episode of Tomorrow's World, with especially ending on that football segment, has really put me in the mood for going to sleep now, Mark. I'm feeling quite tired now. So I think it's probably time I toddled off to bed.
Wow.
So yeah. Well, I suppose our next episode is going to be our Christmas episode, so something to look forward to. Hopefully,
Yeah, but better start packing for our trip to the wonderful log cabin that we record these special episodes in.
So that should be coming out on Christmas Day. But yeah, until then,
sleep well, Russ.
Thank you very much, and
sleep the sleep of champions.
I'll snuggle down, and until next time, if you are on the internet, we will see you tomorrow.
Bye.